Good evening, everyone, and a happy day of Europe. Today we're here to discuss Quo Vadis Europe. I'm Davide Zurlo from Volt Italia, and together here we're going to discuss two important questions. How is to be the newcomer in an established democratic structure? How are the experiences different on local compared to the national and European level? Together we're going to discuss this question and much more with our guests, Damian Boeselager, which is a member of the European Parliament. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for the invite.
Francesco Viola from Mantova, and Katrin Richter, which is a prospective candidate to the elections in Frederiksberg, near Copenhagen in Denmark. Thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure to have you all. Before moving to the questions, we were thinking of an icebreaker for all of you. So, how does it feel to be like a young person engaged in politics without experience at the beginning? How was it? And I would like to ask this question to Damian first, and then to Francesco, and then Catherine. Please.
I think it's the same everywhere. When you start something very young, you still need to fight for people to listen to you, and not to say, it's this unexperienced guy who just thinks that you can, change the world and so on. So, I guess you have to work a bit until people listen to you.
Thank you so much. Francesco, how about yourself? Was it difficult at the beginning when you've been elected?
Yes, at first it felt unreal since I got in by a short amount of votes. But then I realized how lucky I was to represent my fellow citizens at my age. This experience at first can be overwhelming, but after you get your bearings, you realize that you can be a powerful tool towards making everyone's life better.
Wow. Catherine, how about yourself? Tell us.
Well, it's a combination of what has already been said. I think the building of trust is so important. Explaining the vision and building that understanding that changing the status quo is not only possible, but it's necessary. And everything Francesco said about the immense responsibility and privilege that I think we feel, because being responsible for candidacies, being responsible for running on this amazing platform, you really have to dedicate yourself not only to the ideas, but to the people who help you with the campaign and all the volunteers.
Well, Catherine, thank you so much for your inspiring words. I mean, I think we're all here because we want to exert a positive sway and influence on our community. So thank you so much for your words. I would like to start with Damian then. So we are here to discuss certain topics. Like the EU was born to go beyond, trying to go beyond the nation state system, right? Nevertheless, we see now that its legitimacy apparently relies on it. So the question is, to what extent do you think that the current state, the EU, has the potential, has the means to uphold democracy in today's complex world?
I mean, it's a complex question. I think very simply put, what happened is that after the war, people understood that you somehow need to ensure that this doesn't happen again, and that's why they, had the Montan Union. So, the idea of working together when it comes to coal and steel, and that doesn't necessarily mean that you overcome anything national. You just say we bundle some parts of what we do together, because we believe that it actually makes sense to link our countries in a certain sense, and therefore, I think this whole idea of national versus European. From the beginning is not the best way to look at it. It's just if we as separate member states decide that we should take certain things or certain decisions together, let's do it. Yeah? And then you have to decide which way. Do you want to go the old way, where you have 27 heads of states coming together and barter deals out, which is what we still do in a lot of aspects, and which I think has shown that it's a bit flawed, because in our foreign policy it's flawed, when it comes to migration it's flawed, and it's still better than nothing, just to make this clear. But I think we have to also take a bit of this crazy, anti-nationalist kind of thing out. It's not about being anti-nationalist. It's just saying a certain amount of decisions we want to take together. And I personally believe, and I think that's also what Bolt is saying, that the best way to do that would be in a some form of a democratic setting, not in a deal setting where you have the 27, but rather you elect, like we always do in all our nations, a parliament, and this parliament then fields a government, and this government is accountable to the parliament. Yeah, like I think, yeah, I said it, but I think we need to also just make it very simple for people. It's not anti-national, it's not, you know, anything else. It's just how do we take the decisions, and I think we should take it in a more democratic and parliamentary structure. That's all. It's
just a follow-up question, like with regards to your experience right now in the European Parliament, like to what extent it's, you know, because we have different people from different parts of Europe, but, you know, there are transnational priorities now. So, you know, it's not always easy to find a common ground, right? Just want to...
I think honestly, like, it's never easy to find common ground. Look into your national parliaments. Yeah, the people fight, and it's okay. You know, you have different interests, and the interests need to like grind each other a bit, and then something will come out. But in parliaments, it comes out because there's a majority vote in the end. You know, in the end, I need to get a majority to get my law passed, sometimes a 2/3 majority for, like, you know, super important things like constitutional changes. But these conflicts of interest, they're completely normal. That's how we solve conflicts of interest in our democracies, is in a parliament. Yeah, and that's fine. And if the majority of these people can, you know, agree on something, then they send the government to do that. And in the European Parliament, it's the same. You know, there are issues, and very often they have nothing to do with national borders, but they're actually interests, you know, of the more social democratic sides, or the more liberal, or the more conservative side. And that's completely fine. And we should fight, and we should fight loud so that people hear and see that we actually represent these interests. And that's great. So the issue with the EU, obviously, is that it's not just Parliament, and it's not Parliament electing a government, but like you have an overhang of national interest. And as I said, like, national interests are fine and they should be somehow represented, but currently we have too much power in what nations can stop on the European level. And I see this every day. Yeah? I see this when I negotiate migration files, where people really think from a nationalistic perspective, which is really bad, both when you look at labor migration and you want to attract talent, or when you look at you know, the asylum system and you don't want people to suffer. Yeah? Both aspects completely, sorry for the wording, but suck, because we have a flawed system which could be improved. Yeah? I still say it's better than nothing, but like, it could be improved if we were just going to a bit of a more normal parliamentary democracy.
You know, it's the human factor is always there. So yeah, as you said, it's not always easy, but that is why I wanted to go to Francesco, especially with regards to what Damian said. Like, how you think is it possible then to make European priorities chime with local ones? So what Damian said, I think is to some extent right. Like, we were not here to say the national interest is bad, right? Like, how would you describe this relation, Francesco, especially with regards to your experience in Mantova? Let's remember you've been elected. Please.
Yes, I think that the most important goals of Europe are territorial. Local territories have more awareness of their problems than other institutions. For instance, if you want to apply Green Deal in Europe, the territories will play a fundamental role, because they know that the efficiency of the territories. For example, local institutions can encourage to change cars by putting more electric charging points, or they can put limits on the circulation of the most polluting cars. Another theme is the welfare of the citizens and their education, for instance. So I think that the most important instrument is the direct communication between Europe and local government, maybe with easy and direct access to European funds, or with association. So, for instance, for Italy, we have ANCI, National Association of Italian Municipalities, and so.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah, no, I see. I see.
That this is an example. Yes.
Yeah, I see. It's a tough job, huh? Especially, you know, we just heard like what Damian said about the European Parliament. Now you're working at the local parliament, like in the municipality of Mantova. For those who don't know, it's like a town near Milan. No, how much is the population of Mantova, roughly speaking? Like 2,000. 2,000. Yeah, it's quite.
No, 50,000.
50,000, but then we all the population. Yeah,
So,
so
It's very small.
That's great. So, you know, as we say, we have the European level, the national one, and then the community. So it's not always an easy relationship. So that is why I would like to move to Catherine then. So, you know, we have this structure. And how is to be a newcomer then in an established democratic structure? You see, with regards to what Francesco was saying, you know, it's not always easy. We have different levels, you know. How can we make all these things? Let's find a common ground with what we said with Damian too.
I think first and foremost, we should remember that each have a role to play, and that it's really important to be able to connect with where you are in the first instance. And I'm running in an area in Denmark, a municipality with a population of 100,000 people. 100,000 exactly, and it's an incredibly amazing municipality. And I think running on the local level, like I will be doing, it's really important to get the people involved, because one of the things, in order to drive change, you have to make people believe that change is possible. So, you know, it's going to be a wonderful thing for the next 6 months. The election isn't until November, but to be able to drill that thought and that vision of change into people's minds and say, no, we can do this. And by, you know, using these examples like this conversation that we have today, that we are already talking to each other on different levels, national, European level, but also between countries and between regions in Europe, because we're demonstrating that this is possible. We're demonstrating how it's being done. We can show that as an example and say, why can't we do this within even a smaller setting within our own countries, for example? Why do we continue to see these fights between priorities, when at the end of the day, I think we can talk about common ground, but we can certainly also talk about what people are expecting of elected officials. And fundamentally, I think people should expect that their elected officials solve people's problems for them. And so again, like I said before, building that trust and telling that story, that right now all across Europe, people are doing that. They're building bridges, and they're building trust in their local communities, and taking that trust and expanding it all across Europe. That's a wonderful story. That's a wonderful narrative, and one that we haven't seen in a long time, I think. So knowing our roles, I think, is really important, because we all have a role to play in building that trust where we operate on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you so much, Catherine. I think it's very important what you said, especially drawing upon what Francesco told us before, the fact of building trust, you know, in our own country, but also taking into account not only the national level, but also the region, the municipality, the smaller dimension, you know, because history, especially European history, taught us that at the end of the day, walls fall. That is why it's important to build bridges between different cultures. So that is why I wanted to get back to Damian. Like we mentioned all this human perspective, right? The fact of we see a reality, and not only we accept it, but we want to change it. We want to exert positive sway, positive influence on what we see on our communities. So my question for you is, Damian, like, what did inspire you to act and to step up in order to try to, another $1 million question for you, I know, to change our communities? I mean, and how? Like, this is a bit your personal dimension.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, my story is obviously the story of someone else inspiring me, yeah, and which is, I think, a story for many of us, that we get somehow inspired by somebody else. And so I think it's important to understand that we also have a bit of a responsibility to inspire others again, like if we believe in something. Yeah. And so, I mean, for me, it was very simple. It was in 2016, and the time when the Brexit referendum was just happening, or just had happened. Marine Le Pen was getting quite strong. The AfD was really rising very hard, and then also later entering into the Bundestag in Germany, and then Trump getting elected. And so this is like the time when Pulse of Europe started waving Europe flags, and then I met this Italian guy, Andrea, and he said, "Hey, I think Italy is really not going well. I'm going to, I think, build a an Italian party, and I said, okay. And then he said like, yeah, you should do the same in Germany and so on. And then like the whole idea came up of like building a European party, and obviously Colombe was there with us and thinking the same for France and so on. So this was, yeah, I don't know, just like a crazy idea of someone with a lot of energy and saying, yeah, Damian, let's do it. And then really just, pushing for it. I think that's still the one thing that I have to say that, or not have to say, but I'm happy that I met Andrea, who has such a drive and had the vision and the stamina to push it through. Yeah, so that was really his brainchild in the beginning, and I just got somehow. I was just the first to be, a bit caught on this train, right? And somehow like structuring this, and I mean, for me, it was just a really only positive thing, because I was thinking, I was looking for reasons to say no, but it was difficult because like obviously it was a positive, the idea of sending a positive message in all this more negative setting, but also the idea of getting active in politics where nobody wants to be anymore, and also inspiring others to understand that politics is open for them to shape. So there was something really nice for me. And then the idea that we could actually change history for the better. I mean, all of this was just too appealing to say no. And so I'm very happy I didn't.
Thank you so much, Damian. And I hear we have some questions here. So, and I thank you so much all who will drop comments and questions to that. And I really much encourage. I'm going to only read it, and then perhaps we're going to reply. I think this refers to what Catherine said before. We have Aifer Kolkusu, who said on YouTube, local government is very important. Can you go into this matter more in detail? The elections are within a year. I think it's addressed to you, Catherine, but perhaps we can have a comment also from the other guests. So thank you so much, Damian. We'd like to move to Francesco. Francesco, like throughout Europe, so we have different regions experiencing the same problems, like pretty much was what Catherine was saying before, and especially during this difficult time of COVID-19. Like, my question is, like, to what extent do you think that Volt, so a European party, can pragmatically be the common ground that we were mentioning earlier for the new solutions to old problems?
So just to understand, so we answer the question you just said about the local level later, or how do we do it?
Yeah, I think, we can do it later.
Let's do it right away. No, let's do I think it's easier, no, if we answer right away to the questions that you come from the chat. Yeah.
Damian, would you like to reply then to this?
No, question? I think Catherine, as you said, is the perfect person to answer.
There was a question in the chat, and it's about local government and how I envision, is that the question? How you can
strengthen, I think, the role of what the importance of local government. No, that was a bit big. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. I mean, and thank you for the question. That's really great. I think first of all we should remember that our local government is supposed to represent us, and so we should be able to tell our local government what we would like them to do. And I think there is a tendency for local government to tell constituents what local government thinks should be done. And I think we as citizens need to learn to approach and to demand more of an interaction. And it goes back to what I was talking about before, that part of what I really love about Volt is that we're trying to build this expectation of a conversation between electorates and the elected, and that we manage this expectation through sheer persistence and saying, no, we want this dialogue and we want this conversation on an ongoing basis, because that's how we can make sure that the solutions that are being proposed and that will continue to be enforced is in everybody's best interest. And so I am, as you know, I'm a prospective candidate, and that's already now in the process now of engaging that conversation, saying this is what I expect to be doing, this is what I hope that you will vote for me in order so that enable me to have this conversation with you on an ongoing basis. And what I find and what I see, and I think what we're also seeing across Europe, is that we as constituents are also learning that we can expect more from our electorate, and that it shouldn't just be on election day that we manage this expectation by voting or not voting, but that we manage this expectation on an ongoing basis. And so having that dialogue is something that I really look forward to if I'm elected.
Finger crossed, Catherine. Thank you so much for your answer. And I very much encourage everyone who is looking at us right now and listening, please drop your questions, your comments to our guests. So I very much encourage them. And so Francesco, I mean, how can Volt pragmatically solve and be the common ground for new solutions to old problems throughout Europe? Today, only difficult questions with our guests.
Yes. Of course, the solution for me is the sharing of a best practice applied by local governments and institutions. First of all, with the instruments and policies used to fight the pandemic. Volt, I think, should be the bridge that connects all European countries in this sense, since this already uses this method and has a defined structure, and it should help create a stronger cooperation between not only single countries, but regions and even cities. The ultimate goals would be to create a European association of municipalities, such as ANCI in Italy, to share all the solutions to the problems that many cities have but don't know how to solve by themselves, and to promote the policies that are exposed in the local governments. For example, last month, our local government has given a mandate to our mayor and ANCI to accelerate a policy to further reduce the gender gap. So I think this is a good idea.
Yeah, for sure. And especially this is a very important topic, not only in Italy, but like throughout Europe. So yeah, it's thank you so much for addressing this question. And the good thing about being live, we have another question for you, Damian, from Joachim Svan on Facebook this time. So question to Damian, could it be possible for some MEPs with federalistic views could switch party to Volt, in your opinion? So the fact of having other MEPs with our same ideas of European federation could switch to Volt. How do you
I mean, everybody is free in their democratic right to do whatever they want. Like, I mean, if someone is a citizen somewhere in Europe and he wants to become a Volt member, he or she is free to do that. And if there's someone that also happens to be an MEP and then like in the European Parliament, they can do that. That's absolutely free for them to do. For me, what's always important is do people believe in the cause? Do people think that the idea of a European political party is a good idea, and do they connect to our program and say this is what I care about and this is what I want to do? And if that's the case, I mean, then everybody's welcome.
That's very great. I mean, everyone is welcome. I think it's a proper sentence to describe the situation. And we have another question here from Mark Koenen on YouTube. And I think this one is for you, Catherine. What story, or everyone also can address it, by the way, what story can we tell about the EU and Volt on a day like Europe Day? So this is a question of narrative. We have other questions coming in, so please be prepared. Catherine, what story we can say? You were mentioning the fact of a narrative, of a vision, What story can we say about Volt, about the EU in such a day, in your opinion?
Well, I'm going to make an example that just happened today. We were out on the streets today and celebrating Europe Day, and we had some flyers, and we met people on the streets and said hello and happy Europe Day. And this gentleman came up and said, oh, I voted for you in the other election in March for the Tweede Kamer in the Netherlands. But he was in Denmark, he was in Frederiksberg. And that's a nice story to tell on Europe Day, that we now have a political party that run on the same political platform that is sharing these common visions across Europe and there is finally, as a European citizen living, working, traveling around Europe, there is now a party for these people, for people like me, for people like you. You can feel politically at home even while traveling. I think that's a very nice story to tell.
To feel always at home, I think that's a great comment you made, and you know, because we're living in different parts of Europe, different regions, different municipalities, but at the end of the day, we're facing the same problems, you know. So yeah, I think this is a good way to frame it. And we have another question here on Facebook. So thank you so much for all the comments and all the questions we received here. I'm gonna read it now. What can you reform in the European system? So the direct question. What can you reform in the European system? Less people, less bureaucracy, more responsibilities. How can you let slowly die out this enormous amount of public officials? Then Damian, I mean, you have to reply to this. And how can you install a government which is able to act quick and efficiently, like in a pandemic or other challenging situations? How can we address this question? How can you reform the European system?
So first, I mean, I think it's a bit of a misconception that the EU is such a huge animal. Yeah, I mean, if you actually look of how many administrators work in the EU versus a national government, it's much smaller. So I mean, I think I forgot the exact comparisons, but like it's really like quite a tiny, group of staff in comparison. So like I think that's also important to keep this in mind, that we are often told by the media are inefficient Brussels, like why do we pay so much and so on. And that's actually not quite fair if you look. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't always try to improve bureaucracy and make things efficient and smarter. I'm definitely agree with that. But just if you look at it, it's actually not true. The reason why the EU is not working as much as it should be, and what I think we should reform, is because of how we take decisions, not how many, like how many people take decisions, but how. And how we take decisions currently is, our government on the European level, the Commission proposes something, then it goes into the Parliament on the one side, who would decide on it by majority, and it goes into this really opaque kind of system, which is called the Council, where you basically have the national ministers come together for each topic. So for example, for migration, you would have all the interior ministers of all the different member states come together, and they're the second legislative body. So with the Parliament and with these ministers, then you have a fight in the end, and whatever they decide becomes EU law. And where it often fails is exactly in this round of national, for example, interior ministers who for the last 6-7 years couldn't agree on an asylum system. And that is the reason why the EU is, failing, or not always coming up with the best solutions, not failing, but not always coming up with the best solutions. It's actually not because of Brussels, but it's because of our national capitals. So our own national ministers are the ones who are blocking the EU and make it bureaucratic and bad sometimes. Yeah? And this is, I think, really important to understand. We often read in the news, Brussels can't decide, Brussels doesn't do this, the EU is too slow, and so on. It's always, I can almost tell you and promise you, it will always be because of these national ministers who are blocking. So this is what we need to change. We need to stop that, the weakest, if you like, can veto any form of law when it comes to, for example, rule of law. Obviously, it's, Poland and Hungary, or like the Polish and the Hungarian government, which is not the same as the citizens. It's also who are often, blocking progress when it comes to the rule of law or media freedom. Or so this is the issue. We have too much national veto power, which makes us always listen to the weakest and to the most obstructive, sadly, because they are the ones who can veto.
And trying to be the voice of those who are without voice, right? So I like the fact that you mentioned the difference between the government and the people. I think that's a very important one. Catherine, how about you?
Just because you said it, yeah.
Please.
Because I mean,
Please.
What people and what I care about as a citizen is that my issues are solved. Yeah, that like there is some like that we have a functioning foreign policy, we have a functioning migration policy, that we have a good interior market where the smartest ideas in business lead to successful companies. This is what people care about, and that I can feed my family and these things. Yeah, but somehow. Many of these things are stopped because of what I just described, like all these national interests that are too strong. They're okay that they exist, but they're too strong. And that's why I think we need to understand, when we talk about people, Hungarians, Polish, whatever, we need to listen to them, and they need to have a European democracy that listens to them. And then decisions should be taken by majority within this democracy. Yeah? Sorry to just come back on this.
No, thanks, Damian. Kathleen, how about yourself? Before I would like to move to Francesco, but I wanted to ask you a comment on what Damian said first, and especially on this question we got from Sorella. And thank you so much for all the comments and the question. I'm very much encouraged to ask other questions and comments to our guests. So what can you reform the European system? What can reform the European system? Less bureaucracy, all this idea, this struggle between different narratives. I mean, how do you see that in Copenhagen, in Frederiksberg especially? What is your opinion about this, perhaps?
Well, I mean, I'm not going to have that much sway over the deliberations in the European Parliament from the City Council seat in Frederiksberg. Not directly, anyway. I won't have that, but I think one of the things that, I mean, everything that Damian said, obviously, I mean, he sits there and he's experiencing this, and he negotiates these things and works tremendously well, and we're so proud of everything you do, Damian. It's just amazing. Yeah, exactly. And I think that trickles down, you know, that understanding and that transparency that is being brought forward because Damian communicates this to us, and that transparency then trickles down to the citizenry, to us, and we can communicate this out, and we can make this understandable for many more people, to say that we shouldn't just accept the standard narrative that we've been told in the past, and that reforming our institutions, our democratic institutions, require democratic action. And so when we start to elect people who tell the truth, who start to actually look at root causes and then act on those root causes to solve the real problems. For example, Europe doesn't work, well, then you should probably elect some people who want it to work, rather than putting people in office who sits with their arms crossed and say, no, I don't want it to work. So having that transparency, a completely new form of communicating what happens in Europe, I think is going to make a massive difference. And so what is happening now is that you have more and more people through, well, also other parties, I'm sure, but certainly one of the main values involved is have this transparency, this open communication, and more of that will trickle through, and that will generate the reform and the change, because it's a democratic process. And that's how we're going to change things. So it won't be tomorrow, but it will be happening for sure.
Hopefully. Thank you so much, Kathleen, for your inspiring words. I wanted to go to Francesco and ask him, because you mentioned, Kathleen, the fact of the creation of jobs, you know, and right now we're facing an important issue with regards to the climate change. Right? So, you know, Francesco, better than I do, then a huge part in Italy and also at the European level is to counter this climate change. That is why I wanted to ask, like, in the municipality of Mantova, right, with regards to your daily activity, what are you doing? Are you thinking something with regards to the green issues? I mean, is there anything you can say to us about this, perhaps? Please. Wait, we can't hear you.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes,
please.
okay. Yes, we now have changed our Parco del Tè, near historical monuments. And so we think that this is a good idea for citizens for use the park and leave their typical something. Sorry. And so another thing that we can make is buy a park for create another another publican park.
Yeah, we know we have a great deal of problems with that in our cities, and it's actually a tough issue, by the way, because we are building and building and building, and you know, on a political level, it's not that easy to go and touch those interests, you know, and with local companies, and so that's why I know what you mean. Perhaps we can come back to the question later. I don't know. Are you with us?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. No, because we have another question here by Matthew Lynch, which is on what is the argument for a common corp tax? So a common corp tax would not be popular in Ireland for us, as 12.5% tax is good for us. So for those who don't know, a common consolidated corporate tax is a single set of rules to calculate companies' taxable profits in the EU. Damian, Catherine, perhaps. I don't know anything.
It's very simple.
Can
you know, like,
can you explain us a little bit for those who are not that practical?
Yeah, basically, I mean, corporate tax is what the enterprises pay to governments, basically normally on profit. And here, I think what we first of all need to see is that we have a lot of huge, businesses which currently don't register any profits in the countries where they make them, or even across the EU or the world, and somehow find ways to circumvent that. And one way that happens in Europe is by, registering their company in Ireland, and then, basically the way it works is that, for example, if you buy an iPhone in Germany, then what would normally be a profit in Germany for Apple Germany goes as a license fee to the Irish mother company, if you like, so that it's not really seen as a profit in Germany, but it's like the cost for using the Apple brand, if you like, and then it's taxed at a very, like, as you say, Matthew, at a lower rate in Ireland. And I think, I mean, obviously, Ireland benefits from that, because a lot of companies go there and then say, okay, it's nice, we have a lower tax rate here. But the lost money everywhere else in Europe is quite immense. And so I think what we need to find out is ways how we can equal it out a bit, so that, like, not only one, or that basically all the countries try to compete in lowering their taxes, and in the end, the only one really profiting is the companies, but that we somehow get to a minimum level where we say, okay, this is what actually companies should be taxed all across Europe, no matter where they are. And this is important, I think, to ensure that we really have a functioning single market. And even though Ireland might lose some of its attractivity to these huge billion-dollar businesses, I think in the end, for all of Europe, it's better. And then we might need to find ways to also compensate Ireland in a certain way. And maybe if you have a lot more of taxes that would be available, then you can also invest a lot more in Ireland in general. Yeah. So I think that there are ways to ensure that we all win. And in the end, I think what should never happen, and I have to say this quite clearly, is that one country is free riding off of the others. Yeah. I would also not like that if Germany would be doing this. I know that the Netherlands are also doing this to an extent, and I know that Luxembourg is also doing this to an extent, but it's always harmful to the community. And so I think we should somehow ensure that this doesn't happen, that we don't weaken each other just to profit in the short term.
I like the fact of having the interest of the single and the interest of the community. So I think it's important to keep in mind these two levels, which is not always easy to find a common ground between these two, but it's part of the politician's job, perhaps. So thank you so much.
It's happening on the global level right now. No, the OECD is thinking about how to tax these big companies as well. So it's not only in Europe. It is a fact that currently these national countries or corporations completely play our tax systems all across the world. And I think for me, this is really, really bad, because they are obviously profiting from the fact that we have, good education systems, that we have good, places where they can build their factories, and I don't know, all of this stuff, and they don't want to give back. And I think this is really harmful. It's also harmful for all the smaller companies which are actually paying the taxes and can't compete with this because they don't have these huge armies of lawyers and tax experts. So it's really unfair, and it needs to stop. And I also really believe that this needs to be done on the global level, but especially on the European level. We should never allow such free riding.
Thanks, Damian, for your words. I think you made a really important point. I have a question here for Catherine. how can we make from Connie Cowell, thank you so much for your questions. And how can we make the EU even more inclusive, Kathleen? Many people don't know that regular citizens can interact with the EU and make their voices heard, you know, with the fact we were mentioning earlier, to be the voice of those without voice, apparently. What are some of the unnecessary barriers for the participation? But like more in general, how can we make the EU even more inclusive, in your opinion? Perhaps also like Francesco and Damian, you can get back to this question later. Please, Kathleen.
I was going to say, I also want to answer that tax question, but that's okay.
Please, go on.
No.
Important for those who are listening to understand.
Yeah, no, I mean, because I think if I can just answer on the tax question as well, because what we saw in Denmark was that it's not only about you know, as in is the case with Ireland, where there are some national systems in place that attract certain companies. In Denmark, we experienced it on the home care system, so the home care sector. So people who were taking care of elderly people in their homes. International companies were offering cheaper prices to the municipalities for making the same service. And the reason they were able to undercut the prices of national companies, smaller national companies, was because of systems put in place where they could dodge their taxes through Luxembourg and borrowing through very high interest rates, and thus being able to deduct those interest rates against their own profits. But at the end of the day, it was the same carers, the same people who were taking care of elderly citizens. It was their jobs that were being shuffled around. And at the end of the day, I think what Damian said, you know, we have a single market. Why don't we have a single tax? It does make sense, doesn't it? But to then go over to the how can we make Europe more inclusive? I mean, wow, that's a very big question. I think first of all, it starts with you know, finding out what do we actually care about. You know, what do we want Europe to care about, and how can we make ourselves an actor? And you know, there are these available options where you can have your say, and you can comment on issues that are actually coming up in the Commission. But it seems such a big thing. Of course, it's a big thing to have one single voice saying, I would like to make an impact on policies that are being discussed in the European Commission. That leap is very big for any of us. Of course it is, because you're just one person trying to impact everything that's going on across Europe. So I think you know, to make Europe more inclusive, I think what we're doing now is really, really important, that we're having more discussions between people. The Conference on the Future of Europe will hopefully also help to make that change, to have that conversation about the Europe that we want. And then to start to understand, this is a very recent thing. European dialogues as well is a very recent thing that came up just a few years ago. I think there's a transition happening now, where there is more interest in conversing between the Commission, between citizens across Europe. But it's a process, for sure.
I have another answer to add to it. I think the whole, you know, debate and building the civil society is true, but for me it also goes a bit to hard power. And the reason I say this is, if I looked around at the US elections, you know, Trump versus Biden, people knew what was going on to a level of detail that was frightening in Germany, in Europe. You know, like people knew what was going on. They knew that in Georgia there was a certain district which was needed, you know. And the reason why I think it is so powerful and attractive to understand what's going on is because people saw that these votes, they matter for history. You know, they know that if this person wins or this person wins, it has a huge effect on democracy. And in the European elections, I think we could strengthen this. Why? Because if our vote would actually be a vote also for a certain type of politics, you know, and a certain type of government on the European level, like, let's say, for example, I don't know, the conservative or the social democrat or the liberal candidate, I mean, Vestager versus, I don't know, take anyone that is, running and is somehow cool and would really change there's a different vision for Europe. Yeah, this would be a choice. And if you have a powerful choice, you will vote because it will mean an actual effect on your life. And this is what I mean with hard power. If we change Europe in a way that your democratic vote for parliament would change the course of European history, or has the potential to do that, then I think the people would be very much in it, and there would be a lot of dialogue, and there would be a lot of debate, and there would be a lot of knowledge for all of us, because it would be so relevant to us. And currently we are hiding this relevance by making the EU a bit too opaque, a bit, as I said, you vote for parliament, but they don't actually elect a government. The government is elected by all the different member states together because they put forward commissioners, and then it can all be stopped again by the national ministers, as I explained earlier. This is what makes it difficult to understand, and then less relevant also for me. But if, as I said, it would be like earlier, as I said just now, like in a way that you vote for a European direction and a change of European history, I think that would be really the hard power that is needed to make people really engage with the system.
Thanks both Damian and Katrin for your inspiring, really insights and comments, and also addressing the question. I would like to remind to our guests and those who are watching us at the moment that I think we're going towards the end of our session, not now, but like in something like 10 minutes, I think. And but before that, I wanted to ask Francesco, like, how about yourself, Francesco, with regards to what we have been, like we heard so far from Damian and Katrin. I mean, during your mandate, right? You were elected in Mantova. I mean, what are the most important things you would like to realize in your mandate? Also in light with the priorities of European priorities, national priorities, both priorities as well. Can you please tell us a little bit about your mandate now, please?
Yes.
And thanks everyone for the question. We are receiving a lot of questions, but we'll try to do our best. Please, Francesco.
Yes. So, okay, I think that I would like to achieve a bigger step towards carbon neutrality. I want to improve smart and green mobility with the installation of charging points. But I think that during my term, I would like improve policies in the city. For example, last month, our city has obtained European funds that we allow students to participate in the Erasmus program for the next 7 years. And I think that the future of our city is the new generation. And I think that in the past, our policies failed. So
that's why we're here. We try to do our best to not only renew Mantova, but Italy and all Europe. Thanks, Francesco, really. Yes. Yeah, and yeah, I think we have time for another 2 questions here. And I'm picking this one for you, Damian, like Europe of regions. And I try to summarize, we have 2 different questions. So one is like from Joachim's fund, which I thank you for the question, how to reconciliate the division between the northern and southern member states. So this divide between north and south, in your opinion. And then another one is about Europe of regions, right? And in this question by Sorella, she mentioned the fact of Madrid and the Catalan, the Breton, and Paris, the ideas of having a strong region and or to accept a stronger euro. So the north and south divide, and then the fact of how to this region, please.
So I'll start with the regions, yeah, because it actually leads to the first question. But please. For me, I'm never a dogmatic person. Yeah, like I honestly, I'm not a theoretician so much. Like I'm not a strong fighter for the European Republic versus the Europeans of regions. Also, these things personally, and I'm just speaking for myself, not for the party necessarily, I don't care. Like what I care about is functioning government, functioning governance. Yeah? So if you have a good local government that works for a certain region, that is great. If you need a regional governance across certain regions, and it has to do nothing with the national boundaries, that's great. I think we'll always need some form of a national, governance, and you can call it different. You can call it supra-regional governance. You can call it like this, or you can, whatever you want to call it. That's great. And they should be somehow comparable and should somehow work with the cultural and historic background that we operate in. But I'm not dogmatic. I don't care exactly where they're cut. And I think it should be in a way that it works from a governance kind of perspective. So, and the same is true when you now look at certain issues. David and Francesco know this very well. In Italy, you have regional differences. I can tell you the same is true in Germany. We have structurally weak regions and we have structurally strong regions. And the only thing I care about is what kind of policy response works for these regions. That's what I care about. I don't care about North and South. I don't care about, all these things. I care about, you have a region with high youth unemployment. What are the best policies to implement in such a region? What can we learn from other examples of how to do this best? We have a strong divide, country to city. What can we do to somehow overcome this divide? These are the interesting questions, like to bring up these rough ideas about what kind of, counter or like what kind of interests are fighting against each other, I think are not helpful. And that's where I would actually say that the national interest currently blinds us a bit, because they create these false fights between the rich member states and the poor member states, or, the North and the South, or the East and the West, and so on. And I think that's really not helpful to finding good policy solutions. And that's why we need a European fiscal policy. We need to be able to actually target the weakest regions, structurally weakest regions in Europe. And that's what we should care about, because in the end, we can't leave anyone behind, and we don't want to leave anyone behind, because they're potential and they're human beings, and they have lives and stories. And, we don't want anyone to lose out in this project. So this is what I mean. In the end, we need to build a European common base, be it the corporate tax, but I would also say a social, standard that we can all live at, and then help the weakest regions first. Yeah.
Thanks, Damian. I think we have time for to pick up one last question. I read here from Guglielmo Picciocchi, and then I think we're going to close, because in two or 3 minutes. So really, really rapid answer, please. What do you think is the most needed measure to help young students and workers in Europe? Another $1 million question that will take another hour, but we will have to address in 1 or 2 minutes, and then I think we're going to close. So please, Catherine, Francesco too, and then please, we're going to move towards the end of our session. Catherine, come here, please.
Yes, sorry. Could you repeat the question, please? I'm so sorry.
What do you think is the most needed measure to help young students and workers in Europe? Really, I just wanted to have this question from Guglielmo Picciocchi, which I thank, and then I think we're gonna close.
I think we should really promote much more language training across Europe. I can say that in Denmark right now, there's actually talk about what is the value of German to learn the German language. It's ridiculous. There's a massive interest in learning German. It's one of our biggest trading partners in Denmark. But I think there's we could really benefit from having much stronger language skills across Europe, not just in English, but in all our European languages. And secondly, much better coordination between how to transfer skills, how to transfer educations across Europe.
Thank you so much, Catherine, for sticking to the timing. And well, I think we can close the session, because we're running on a tight schedule. So I wanted to thank Damian Boeselager for being here with us. Thank you so much, Damian. And
no, thanks, Davide, for the moderation. Also, Francesca and Catherine. Yeah, it was very nice.
It has been a pleasure. Catherine, we wish you all the best. Finger crossed for the elections in. Let's remember it. You're a prospective candidate in the election in Frederiksberg, so near Copenhagen. So finger crossed with you. Thank you so much for being here with us. Francesco, too, thank you so much from Mantova. And I really encourage you to stay here, because we have another interesting panel after this. So thank you so much, and good evening. And let's continue with Day of Europe.
Good evening, everyone, and happy Europe Day. I am very excited for tonight's panel. We have fantastic guests here, and I will just briefly introduce everyone, even our moderator. And after that, we will not lose any time and start right into the discussion. So first of all, I'm very happy to introduce Dr. Lynn Zell. She is president of European Movement Germany. Actually, that's Germany's largest civil society network for Europe. She received her PhD on the role of the European Parliament and the German Bundestag on the EU long-term financial budget in 2014. Very happy to have you here tonight. Next up, we have Roger Casale. He is Secretary General and, as far as I know, even founder of New Europeans, a civil rights organization which champions freedom of movement, non-discrimination, and the principle of solidarity in Europe. Also, he is member of Change UK and was candidate for the European Parliament in 2019. Delighted to see you here tonight. Next up, we have Malgorzata Burek. She is a freelance translator and member of Mitte 21 e.V. That's an association for the promotion of international understanding and democracy. She also wrote political and historical articles for the Polish newspaper Gazeta Wyborcza. I really hope I pronounced that right. Next up, we have Clara Völler. She is president of YEF Germany. That is the German wing of the Young European Federalists. She has a clear and strong vision of a future European federal state and stronger democracy within the EU. And last but certainly not least, we have Damian Boeselager. He is member of the European Parliament for Volt. He in particularly is member of the Constitutional Affairs Committee and active in the financial budget negotiations. Now, I'm happy to also introduce to you our wonderful moderator for tonight, Claudio Lanza. He is a PhD student in international politics at the University of Westminster and comes from Naples, south of Italy. For Volt, he is part of the Volt Europe Academy team. And with those very fast words, I say the stage is yours. Have fun.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank everyone for being on the panel. I'm going to give a very brief introduction to this panel, and the name of this panel is Quo Vadis Europa. So where does Europe go from here? And that's where we're going to discuss. So I have a few questions for you, but first I would like to say a few things just to introduce the relevance of this question. So today is Europe's Day, and we celebrate peace and unity in Europe. We do this by commemorating the 1950 Schuman Declaration. So in 1950, a Minister of State proposed the creation of a visionary but limited community of states to make peace and unity possible in Europe, and to make it ideologically unthinkable and materially impossible. After 71 years, we may be yet again on the verge of another visionary leap forward. Members of states, experts, representatives of parliaments, and citizens are called to make that leap forward together, and you are representatives of some of the people, of those leaders that are going to lead this process. So the first question I would like to ask you relates to the so-called governance challenge, and how the European Union will navigate the post-pandemic world. So now, the ongoing public health crisis caused by the COVID-19 pandemic is another challenge to the merits of further integration of the European Union. And there is a growing sense that states, when they're not pulling in different directions, they dominate the scene reproducing and widening the chronic democratic deficit of the EU project. So my question for all of you to have a conversation on is the following. Do you think that the next generation EU, the recovery package containing a reinforced long-term EU budget for 2021-2027 represents a sort of Hamiltonian moment for Europe, marking a permanent step towards more integration, or a mere ad hoc temporary solution for extraordinary times? I would ask anybody of you to start the contribution. What about Damian?
I'm a bit shy because you introduced all the other people and they, I think, have at least a PhD on the topic. If I look at Lynn, or like have studied it a lot. I mean, I can only speak from a more like a practical experience kind of perspective. I think it was quite clear that when it comes to an actual health response, the EU was not ready and able to react really well to what was going on. Neither to really help in the first days with coordinating an actual Corona lockdown strategy, but also a bit later when we talked about the vaccination strategy, we realized that it was very good that we did it somehow together so that we wouldn't bid all the national member states against each other with the vaccination producers. But I think what we saw is that the decisions on the European level were taken by this SteerCo, the steering committee of national health ministers, and they were in the end accountable, but the negotiations were led by the Commission, who was then somehow accountable to these health minister circle, and it was all a bit ad hoc. And I think when it didn't go so well in a normal kind of, let's say, if we had a fully functioning European parliamentary democracy, you could have questioned the health minister who would have been responsible and accountable to make these deals and do that. So I think we can still learn a lot from that, also how to improve. But since you asked about the budgetary perspective, I mean, I was very happy to be part of the negotiation team of the recovery fund, so the recovery and resilience facility. And I think here the EU did a good job, to be honest. Yeah, I think that's where, in a very short period of time, the Commission came up with the idea of building a huge fiscal instrument to help get out of this crisis, not to go through the crisis. There was a bit other tools that we used, but to actually get out of this crisis with this recovery money. And I think for the time that it took to get it all together, I'm quite happy. Will it be a Hamiltonian moment? It depends on two things. First, whether we will actually make it a success, and that depends on the national plans that are currently being handed in, if the money is actually used correctly and well. And the second is, do we have the political will, again, in the different member states to actually make it something constant and not a one-off, as was actually forced and how do you say this, required by the Netherlands and Austria and other very frugal countries.
Thank you, Damian. So I asked you first because you had kind of insider perspective, and I see you are positive about the Hamiltonian moment. I know that Lynn has done research on this particular issue. So if you would like to share more positive or a bit more cautionary contribution on this particular Hamiltonian moment, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Claudio. And first of all, thanks for the invitation. Well, I did some in-depth research on the 2014 multi-annual financial framework, but it is, and I agree with Damian that it really remains to be seen to what extent it will be a Hamiltonian moment. Indeed, I would fully agree that it was historic, because if you remember how usually this budgetary negotiations go, and every member state is digging their heels into the ground in order not to spend any cent more than they have to, it is really historic. 700 billion euros agreed in such a short time frame with such a it's not unheard of, but with this new budgetary instrument of having joint loans. So I think this is really a big step forward, and it also shows that in crisis situations, the EU is able to respond. Of course, there are also at the same time many shortcomings that Damian already mentioned in the way we responded to the overall pandemic. But I think the Invest EU package shows that if there's a will, there's an ability to do it. And it also shows that once the German government, who in the past years has been very, I'd say, cautious in everything they did with respect to European policies, at this time they said, well, we have to take a leap forward, also because of self-interest, because if our neighbors don't grow out of this crisis, it's also a big economic problem for Germany. So it's not only solidarity, but also self-interest. But at the same time, it will hopefully help and benefit all of our countries and all of our people. So I'm really positive about it. And then I'd say, well, it remains to be seen to what extent there might be a permanent mechanism or more permanence. But in budgetary thinking, it will be a bit complex. I think Damian probably knows more about it, but the question will be in 2 or 3 years' time, they will start to repay the loans. And so this will be a crucial point where we have to say, well, to what extent do we really want, or how do we want our budget to look like? Do we want to have more own resources, something that we as European movement would favor, or do we want to cut money elsewhere? So there are, at the moment, it's very successful, and we will look at how the member states will implicate or use the money. But there are many tough battles ahead, and there you again have the veto logic between the European member states, which is always a big hassle. Yeah, also when you look at the rule of law mechanism and all that.
Thank you, Lynn. So the initial battle is won. The war is not over, and so I think it was a bit optimistic as well. So that's promising. Now I would like to ask the same question, and so a contribution from Margorgiata. Hopefully, I mean, that's the Italian version of your name. I'm so sorry for that. So, because from your perspective, I think you come from a place where there was already tensions around the adoption of this particular process and package from the very beginning. So I guess from your perspective, you see more problems ahead rather than promising opportunities.
Thank you for the invitation first. It's a great pleasure to be here. I think I agree with my preceders. The crisis show us what is the European Union able to. At first, there was some problems and misunderstandings, like lack of solidarity towards Italy, for instance. But then European Union showed that it's able to tackle the problem, like, for instance, discussing this recovery fund. The plan is good, I think. Let's look like the implementation will look like. That's the actual problem. And especially with regard to the countries having problems with the rule of law, I think we have to be careful. But there is also mechanism, and I think it's not that easy to spend the funds because they're not straightforward. They will be controlled, and I'm confident that it would go well, actually. But we have to keep in mind that every populist government is hero in their own country, and everything that possibly go wrong is always somebody's else fault. In this case, European Union. Is it easy to blame European Union for everything that possibly could go wrong? So, but as I said, I'm confident that the mechanism will work.
I see. So the major dynamic that see Europe as a scapegoat is not going to be it's going to be still part of European politics, despite this leap forward in terms of fiscal integration. I wanted to ask Clara, from your perspective, how do you see, how do you feel about, this particular, the response from the European institutions to this crisis, mindful of the fact that this is the latest crisis, and in the past we saw very different responses from the European institutions and the European member states to other major crises, like financial crisis in 2008, the European migrant crisis in 2014-15. But in this particular case, also given that you are, given your age, given our age, how do you see this this development?
Yes, thank you. Also, first of all, from my side for the invitation. Coming to your question, I can very much agree with everything which has been said before by the other panelists. And for us as DEF, with regard to the recovery fund, we very much welcomed the own resources decision, because this was a real a sign of solidarity. So what was missing before at the beginning of the crisis, we now finally through the recovery fund we're able to show that kind of solidarity. We wish, however, for a permanent mechanism, which would also eventually include common taxes, so to kind of establish some mechanism that has potential for the future as well. Also, with regard to the recovery fund, I mean, there is this approach to build back better, which is, from our opinion, like very important, as it also includes issues of climate change, sustainability, but also social issues. And here's, I think, something which is very important for the future, because at the moment, young people suffer a lot. When you look at the numbers for youth unemployment, for example, across Europe, that's very dangerous. And given that at the moment young people are the ones who feel very committed to the European Union, I think this is something we should care about a lot, because as soon as young people don't feel safe anymore and don't feel that the European Union is a safe space for them with regard, for example, to employment, we're going to lose them. And this is if we do, we actually lose the future of Europe somehow. Yet the recovery fund alone won't save us for the future. So you asked for the other crisis, and you asked in general, like you put the question in the broader question of governance and governance challenge. And I think we've very much seen in the last weeks is a lack of competences on the European level. So with regard to health policy, for example, we were missing competences there, and also we all have seen those pictures of closed borders, for example, which is huge in the history also of young people, because again, me, for example, I never experienced closed borders until recently. And what we've seen afterwards, like the hostility, verbal but also physical insults between the citizens, is super dangerous. And I would have wished that the European Union would be, or that the member states would be more able to cooperate here and do something together instead of each on their own.
Thank you, Clara. With greater powers comes greater responsibility, right? And that's the famous say. And probably one of the way that's one of the fields that the European institutions didn't really make the best of their work. I definitely agree with you on this. And hopefully the implementation will go in a different direction. Roger, last but not least, hopefully from you, more critical elements from this turn. But what do you see then? How do you see this package, this recovery package, and the next budget? Up to the task?
Thank you very much, Claudia. Claudia, I think I have to say, I think you're an Italian European, if I'm not mistaken, and based in London. And I'm an English European. I'm based in Italy. I'm speaking to you from Italy. And of course, you'll know the words of the great Italian writer Lampedusa in his book, The Leopard, where he said, everything has to change so that everything has to change, it stays the same. And I think the first point I would like to make, Claudio, is that I think everything has to change. And I think that there is a potential for everything to really change, for profound transformative change, to so that the European project survives. I think it's absolutely necessary that that happens with or without the pandemic. But I think the pandemic gives us the opportunity to actually make those changes that, in my view, were necessary anyway. And I think it's very interesting that Dr. Lynn Sellers said to us, reminded us that 15 months ago in the Council of Ministers, the heads of state were fighting with each other all night long over 0.01 or 0.02 or 0.03. Should we go from 1.06% of GDP for the European budget to 1? Now we've got double the budget, double. So this is really quite an extraordinary change. And I think if you think about what we've all been doing, we've all been campaigning, we're all campaigners, and I salute the work that you do. And in the Europeans, we've been campaigning. What have we been campaigning for? Yes, to get, as Clara said, and Marco Sada reminded us, get solidarity into the recovery program. The word solidarity is everybody's lips, and that's happening. To get Eurobonds. Let's remember we've got Eurobonds now. We didn't have those before. We campaigned for that. These things are happening because we're campaigning. We're going to have a European Health Union. It's something that we care about very strongly in New Europeans, who we've been campaigning for. And we're getting these things, apparently. And not only are we getting them, but the Commission is saying, you're getting these because we're listening to the citizens. The Rights and Values Programme. Thank you to Damian and MEPs, our representatives in the European Parliament, who stuck up for the Rights and Values Programme, which the Council of Ministers wanted to cut, wanted to slash it. But it's been protected. In fact, it's been increased, it's been doubled. So yes, I think that the opportunity is there for real change. The doubling of the European budget is absolutely extraordinary, but it's not going to be a question of having a Hamilton. It's going to be a question of having a Malgorzata Burek, a Clara Feller, a Eileen O'Sullivan, Dr. Eileen O'Sullivan, a Claudia Lanza, particularly young people who I think, because we've got to take a long-term view, we've got to have different, people who understand the kind on the ground, really, and especially for the position of young people today, what needs to change. We need to listen to them, to put you in the driving seat, come forward with new ideas. And that's where the change, the transformative change is going to come from. So I think we need to think about how we can empower citizens and civil society and young people in particular, because you know what needs to be done. The question really is, how do we get it done? And I'm very, very interested to hear what others are going to say in the rest of this conversation on that issue.
Can I quickly react to that, Claudia? Because I mean, I think I actually thought the same, Roger, what you just said. When we hear these titles like Quo Vadis, yeah, it makes us think like, okay, let's watch the EU go a certain way. Let's predict which way it will be going. Yeah, so I'm criticizing our own event title, but what you're saying is like, no, let's not watch it. Let's push it in the direction that we want it to go. So the question, was this a Hamiltonian moment, depends completely on us. And we have, I think, now a good window of opportunity. And it all went okay-ish, I think. And now we have to use every chance, like be it on the health side, or be it the conference on the future of Europe, or be it on the making the funds more, the recovery funds more permanent. These are all things that will happen if we make them happen, if we create enough pressure on our politicians, or if we are politicians to create enough pressure within the system to somehow make them a reality. I really like that point. So sorry for picking this up.
Well, thank you. I think this is important, and I actually would like to take this opportunity to move the conversation to the next challenge that I want to pose to you all, the democratic deficit challenge, and open up the conversation on the relationship between the European Union and the newly launched conference on the future of Europe. I think there is a great way to bridge between the first theme and the second. Now, in a recent survey published by the European Parliament, nearly half of all respondents support the EU, but wish to see greater reform being brought about. And contrary to the legacy of the European Union project, the Conference on the Future of Europe represents this probably, and that's my take on it, an historic opportunity to let Europeans, so people, everybody, give new impulse to the European Union project and shape EU core policies and stimulating, inclusive, more participatory discussion with many limits, but also still, it is a first at this level. Now, the question I'd like to pose to all of you is, will the Conference on the Future of Europe reduce the democratic deficit of the institutions? And if so, is it here to stay? So whoever wants to answer this question, I'm open. I think I would go, if I can, to Clara in terms of age. I think that's a good filter to start the conversation. So, as the EU is empowering you and me and everybody to put forward our voice. What do you think about this process?
Well, Conference on the Future of Europe has been very, very interesting to follow, also in terms of procedural negotiations that were there for the last year. And you asked for the democratic deficit. I think the Conference on the Future of Europe kind of started with the democratic deficit when we look at the recent discussions, also especially in the last week, when we see that the Council and the Commission and the Parliament can't really get together when it comes to the question who's actually in the end evaluating the results and deciding like what results will be taken to another level and which won't. The conference, I really, really hope that it will solve a democratic deficit in the sense that it will, for example, give the right of initiative to the Parliament and also strengthen the Parliament in general, and also foster some reforms, for example, on the electoral field to have a more common electoral system and electoral act across the Union. For example, in Austria, people are allowed to vote from 16 years onwards. In many other countries in the EU, they're not. And this is very, very hard to explain to young people, especially when you have friends. I have friends in Austria, and to me, that was also always a bit strange. So there are these very specific aspects where we can actually start to tackle the democratic deficit. But in order for the conference to be a success, we kind of all have to be part of it. So first of all, when it comes to the results, Europeans really must feel to be taken seriously. So, for example, if they're discussing in the next months and in the end nothing will change, then I think that this is again a huge danger to the credibility of the whole process. Yeah.
Thank you, Clara. Roger, do you think that this response from the European institutions is the right one after Brexit, so the withdrawal of the United Kingdom from the European Union project, as it is, given what Clara has highlighted in terms of the limits and the contradictions, or it isn't?
I think it's a step in the right direction. I think we need to calibrate our expectations about the Conference on the Future of Europe, not expect it to deliver too much, because otherwise we'll be disappointed and we'll experience it as a setback. We need to think, how can we make it a success? How can we contribute to its success? And especially we need to think what's going to come afterwards, because the Conference on the Future of Europe is an exercise in direct democracy, in bringing citizens in. And this is extremely important that we do this. And we need to do it not just for 1 year as a kind of experiment, which is what the Conference on the Future of Europe is going to end up being. We need a permanent mechanism. So I think the Conference on the Future of Europe, this is our position in New Europeans, should say at the outset that one of the legacies of the conference will be a permanent mechanism for engaging citizens. And yes, I think that is one of the lessons to learn. We don't know what we've got until it's gone. At midnight on the 23rd of June 2016, searches for the European Union spiked in the UK because people, when they found out that Britain was leaving, they thought we'd all better find out what this is all about. I think we need to get serious here and understand what's at stake. And what's at stake is the future of the European project. And Europe is a union, not just of nations and states and members and money and markets. It's also a union of citizens. And now we need to bring the citizens in. It's about the resilience of and sustainability of the European project, to democratize the European Union. And I think we have to say, if I may just say this, we have to stop having the conversation all the time about what kind of Europe do we want. That's like waiting for Father Christmas to come, yeah? Writing a list. We have to say, this is what I have to give to Europe. This is what I have to bring. Look at the people you've got on this conversation now. Damian's in the European Parliament. Look at Dr. Sella, Clara, Margaret. We need to think about what we as citizens can bring. You know, we're meeting with the Commission at the moment to discuss this idea of the European Health Union. Every time we fix up a meeting, they say, yes, we want to understand what your concerns are. So it's not that we've got concerns. We feel we've got something to offer because we can help to engage. We're not coming to say, complain, we're coming to offer something, to give something. Our convening power, our ideas, our energy, our enthusiasm. We need to say, use the Conference on the Future of Europe to ask the question, what do you, the citizen, have to give to Europe? And I'm afraid that if the citizens don't support European project going forward, it won't be there in the future. And that's the lesson of Brexit.
Thank you, Roger. I think this is quite an interesting take, yours. It reminds me of Kennedy's speech, don't ask yourself what the US can do for you, but what you can do for the country. But perhaps from Poland and countries where certain core freedoms and core agency over the citizens is questioned and is problematic, probably, I don't know, do you feel, Margojata, that is it the same approach that you have on this particular process? Do you see it as a meaningful one when it comes to the challenges that you face as European citizens in Poland? Or what are your views on this particular process?
I was going to make some practical remarks once again from the practical point of view. So the idea is very good, but the implementation, once again. So I'm living actually in Germany, and I'm following the news. I'm watching with great attention the news. And I must say, I saw hardly anything about the conference. So if we spend so much money on recovery, we should perhaps spend a little money on promotion, because the idea is good, but I haven't heard a lot about it, not at the first place. On 19th April, the platform was launched. I had nothing about it.
I see. So definitely, is the European Union wanted to give us the opportunity to offer solutions. It could have done better the job of this promotion and this giving us this possibility. I would definitely agree with that. Lynn, now from your perspective, I would say today I was listening to the ceremony, and what stood out was, to me at least, was the President of the European Parliament, Davide Zurlo, almost showing courage by saying, if people have dare to offer changes to the treaties, they can do it. They should do it. And he was very passionate, as all Italians are when they kind of make this kind of speech. So do you think that that's the kind of direction where this process should go, and this direction would give more strength and impetus to this whole participatory exercise?
Yeah, actually, I saw this as well, and I had twofold thoughts or feelings about this, because on the one hand, I think it is true and it is super important that citizens get involved, both what Roger said, and I would agree what Margojata said, that definitely needs more publicity. And I have the impression that very often citizens are much more progressive, not like party political wise, but in their thinking about how Europe should evolve. That many people just don't understand what this whole haggling about the veto powers in foreign policy are all about, because they understand that we can only be sovereign as Europe and not as single member states. So I think there's a great opportunity to have citizens involved and have their ideas on the table. But at the same time, if David Sassoli stands and says, well, if citizens dare to propose, he just makes himself very small. He is an elected representative. And I think when we talk about the conference, very often we'd only talk about citizens' participation. Don't get me wrong, this is a super important pillar of the conference, but we shouldn't forget who is in the plenary. And this is where elected officials sit, parliamentarians from national, from European Parliament, member states, representatives, and they are the ones who will take decisions. And we shouldn't let them out of this responsibility and tell them, look, maybe you get great impetus from citizens, but it is your responsibility. You are elected to do this, to take these choices. And this is a great, great danger I see with the conference, that at the end of the day, you have these citizens' dialogues, you have great ideas, and then it kind of vanishes in the air in the plenary. And this is also why my organization, we try to lobby very hard to get this link and tell people, look at what is going on in the plenary and put pressure on the people that are representatives there, because otherwise the conference will fail.
Thank you, Lynn. I think the way you are, it was a bit pragmatic from your side as well. And I think I think you stressed the importance of the role that the people in the plenary have, and the members of the European Parliament, the national parliaments, and all the others have, and how citizens should actually be more active than just being on the platform to lobby for their solutions, their ideas to be actually discussed in the Parliament through different means. And Damian, I know that you're very active on this topic, and you deeply care about this, the empowerment of European citizens. So how do you feel about this? Where this process is going, because discussions and negotiations are still are ongoing, and we still don't know what the Conference on the Future of Europe is and will be.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I agree, with all of you basically saying, it's a bit two-sided. On the one hand, we want to use this opportunity, and on the other, we don't know whether it would actually work, because of the money that's spent. Actually, there were the member states trying to curb all the money that's going to be spent on it. That's why we don't have a promotion on it, because we don't have a separate budget for it, but that's just details. And in the end, to be honest, it made me think about, why we started Volt. And why did we start Volt? Is because we had, if I can say that, a shitty situation. The EU being really in a bad place with Brexit happening and being voted for. And you have a suboptimal situation, and then you have the choice. Either you say, okay, I disengage because it makes me somehow sad, or you say something else, which is what we try to say. I'll be positive about the future and try to promote positive visions. I'll be pragmatic with whatever means I have to make this work. And I'll be progressive in trying to really, push it in this direction. And this is true for the conference as well. We will use it to the maximum amount that we can. We will push it as hard as we can. We will try to have this debate, which we anyways have to have without the conference or with it, about what the future of Europe will look like. And we will try to be as loud as possible. And if the system is not ready yet, if the national interests still keep us from actually making this conference what it should be, it doesn't matter. It matters because it would be easier if it would be easier, but we will anyways continue. We will anyways push for this, and we will use other channels, and we try to engage citizens via other means. And for me, it's also a bit connected to, party power. Yeah, like parties, political people, they care about power, and the way, that I think that Volt is trying to do it is by saying we will steal their seats if they don't, try to change Europe in a way that is better. So And I think we need to just use any form of influence that we can to improve the European Union, because it's actually, I do believe, quite urgent, as Brexit has shown us. So in the end, I can only pledge to you that if I get into the conference plenary, I will scream as loud as I can that we need these changes, and that we need the treaty changes, and that we need to have a more humane migration policy by not having vetoes from countries that are trying to stop it. So, and I think whatever you do, go out there and say to your citizens and to the people that you work with and organize, say, look, I can't promise you that this conference will go well. But it doesn't matter for what we need to do now, which is to use it to the maximum extent, to be the loudest we can, and not be, disenfranchised or sad or depressed because it didn't work. It doesn't work. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work because the system, the national interest, is still somehow strongly trying to stop it from happening, because I think they know that if they would dare a bit more, citizen participation, they would lose out. Exactly as you said. Yeah, I think they know that if you talk about foreign policy, they don't care about the Bundestag's foreign policy committee or, the foreign minister in Germany. They care about the fact that we don't look like idiots versus Russia, yeah, or like idiots versus. So I think citizens are there, and there's a lot of national interest trying to stop these citizens' interests to manifest themselves, and we just need to organize them as best as we can, be it via parties or via your associations. It really doesn't matter, but we need to just do it anyways. And therefore, I think, don't be afraid to say, let's go for it full in with all our power. At least we tried. And if it doesn't work, we try again the next time with something else, or we try in parallel with something else. Yeah?
Thank you, Damian. Your passion on the topic is, is there for everybody to see it. So thank you for that. Now, I know we still have some time to discuss, this challenge, the democratic deficit challenge. But given Roger's input on, what do we have to offer to this, to tackle these challenges as leaders, I would like to ask you, and then have the last part of our conversation on precisely this particular insight. So you all represent here, the young and younger generation of Europeans actively involved to improve the lives of the European citizens across member states, thus contributing to shape the destiny of Europe. Now, the question that I wanted to ask you was, where do you want Europe to go in the next decades? But given Roger's insightful remark, I'm going to ask you a slightly different question. And it is, where are you going to push Europe in the next, with your work, in the next years? And so where do you see yourself in your work in moving the needle in the European Union politics? So feel free to start the conversation. I would like to start the conversation probably with a place where, with the most pragmatic of the group. So Margherita, please give us your pragmatism again.
I see I gained a nickname. So I think that I'm quite optimistic. I think that the present situation is an opportunity. Crisis can be a chance. It forces us to strengthen our union and to look forward, because we have no other option. For instance, reform movement. We're not just trying to combat crisis, we're trying to get a good leap forward, like Green Deal. Like yesterday was discussed the European social pillar or migration politic. It will be a turning point. I think it will be a turning point in European history. We are forced to do it, but it's good. So such difficulties force us to act independently from the external factors. Donald Tusk said about cooperation, transatlantic cooperation with former President Donald Trump, if you need a helping hand, you will find one at the end of your arm. So we're forced to, and this is good. So
I think so. Thank you for, again, as you said, an external force pushing very pragmatically for change in that direction. I think it is the right kind of optimism that we need at this time of the day. So now, Clara, you have, you just started probably your career and your activity, your political activity. So I don't know if that's a fair question to ask for the next decades, right? But where do you see yourself pushing Europe?
Well, maybe to put it from that perspective. As DEF, we are advocating for the United States of Europe since over 70 years now. And this is very much like where we want to go and where we want to have Europe also in the next decades. So personally, I was betting on it, whether we will have the United States of Europe in the time that I'm still living. And I say, yes, we will. So this is my my perspective on the, my vision on the topic. And what we do within JEF and as Federalists is kind of to advocate for that on many different levels. So on the one hand, to experience Europe not only in Brussels but also locally, which is, I think, very, very important. For example, especially to build Europe bottom up. And only if you build Europe bottom up, you can have a European democracy, and also it will work in the future. Secondly, to understand Europe, so to be engaged, and this is also what we do in education, not only on European issues, but also on transnational democracy. And this being said, also to empower people to actively participate in shaping Europe themselves. And yeah, this is thirdly shaping Europe, so engaging with politicians, discussing with people, kind of drawing the division we have, United States of Europe. What would that mean as a next step? What should we do as next steps to go there?
Thank you, Clara. I think as Davide Zurlo said, and I'm not, by the way, too biased for the only Italian in the room when it comes to the ceremony on the Conference on the Future of Europe. I really believe that the public health crisis really showed the importance and the urgency to have an European policy on human health. And so thank you for doing this, for moving the needle on this particular sector, but overall for working to make the European Union, the Federation, part of our life, our lifetime. So, Damian, I go to you. You have a mandate, right, in Parliament. So probably for you, it's easier to think about from now to the end of your mandate. But probably your activity will not stop at the end of your mandate. So where probably your question is kind of double. How do you see yourself in the European Parliament now, and what this experience is, teaching you in how you can move the needle?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm obviously fighting for all the different issues that we promised in our election campaign in 2019, a more just society, which is why I work on my better, asylum system, migration system, a more like innovation-friendly society, which is why I work, for example, on the Data Governance Act, on data sharing and so on. But if you really ask me what, is the one thing that I'm pushing for the most, and which, is also probably the most difficult, it is to allow Europe to dare democracy. My dream is that you can go to a vote for the parliamentary elections and you really have a choice between different visions of where Europe is going, an actual difference in history, because that would make people vote with the feeling that they have an influence, so that you can vote for a more social democratic Europe, that you can vote for a more liberal Europe, that you can vote for a more conservative and even maybe less migration friendly Europe, if that is really what you want, you know. But this, we need to dare this democracy so that people have the feeling that they influence how Europe is making decisions. So apart from my priorities on migration, on digitization and so on, what I really want is that all citizens can express these priorities by the vote that they take and that they cast, and that this vote translates into a different Europe either way. Yeah. And I think this is really the one core thing that I need. And to be honest, and that I will fight for and push for, and I don't have the patience that Clara has for that. I really believe we need to get this done as soon as possible, because if all other options, I think this meddling through kind of thing doesn't work so well as Brexit showed.
Thank you, Damian. I think it shows how, you know, having a big vision can really help, also bringing, you know, the change forward on topical issues like, privacy and, data ownership. I think this is part of our present, but if we don't, if we're not democratic in the way we, share our data, and so transparent and then consensual, that's definitely, we cannot talk about democracy in Europe. So, Roger, now from your perspective as British sensibility in the beautiful land of Italy, how do you see yourself now in moving the needle forward? So, where do you see yourself? What's your offer?
Oh, well, I just want to offer my encouragement and experience and mobilize our networks and work in partnership with others to breathe life back into European democracy after the pandemic. The pandemic took our breath away in more ways than one. And Mal Cozzata is, absolutely right. There is an opportunity in the crisis, and I hope that we will see a big transformation in how Europe works. I hope we'll see it not just in Clara's lifetime, but in mine. And I know we're short of time, but I just want to say this. I mean, I was, I know Lena's in Berlin, I think not far from Kreuzberg, possibly works in Kreuzberg. I've been reading up on you, doing my homework. And in the 1980s, late 1980s, as an exile from Thatcher's Britain, I was living in Berlin when the Berlin Wall came down. And it was a transformative experience for everybody, including me. And I went back to school, I studied in Bologna. I did my master's in Bologna. I ended up going back to the UK and becoming a Labour MP in 1997 in my 30s. And, the Conservatives have been out of power for we've been out of power for 18 years. And so the generation above me were sort of had slight mixed feelings. On one hand, they felt, oh, well, big change is coming, but they kind of wish they were kind of 20 years younger. And I just say, I'm not being patronizing. I think I have the same feeling about what's going to happen now. And so I offer my encouragement, my experience, my advice, and our networks through New Europeans to say, go for it. Big change really is possible, and it's really down to us. And we need to mobilize people. And a lot of people say, well, what's it got to do with me? Why should I be involved? And the answer to that is, by the time it does have something to do with you, it could be too late to do something about it. So, today is the 100th anniversary of the birth of Sophie Scholl. Be the Sophie Scholl of your generation. Have that vision, that energy, that imagination, that commitment, because if you put that to work, you're not going to be disappointed. But always ask yourself the question, who else do we need to bring into the conversation? Who else do we need to? And so I think that's the biggest challenge. So I can just what I offer is encouragement, belief, and really say, you be the change, and just get on and do it. That helping hand is at the end of your arm, but reach out with. That's one hand. With the other hand, reach out to others as well. Bring the outsiders in, especially migrants, refugees, others. This is going to transform Europe. We can do it. It's down to us. And believe in yourselves and show the leadership that Europe so desperately needs.
Thank you, Roger, for that inspirational take on, hopefully everybody who's listening and tuning in and will see and watch this video will feel the same feeling that you were sharing to us. Now, last but not least, Lynn, where do you see the kind of change, what kind of change you want to bring to Europe in the next years ahead?
Yeah, it's very hard for me now to respond after Roger's great words, which are already kind of feel like the concluding words, which really touched me. This question, who do we need to bring into the conversation? Because this is also from European Movement Germany. We are a organization of organizations. So we have 250 members from all parts of the society, trade unions, youth organizations, environmental organizations, and so on. And we always try to have those organizations holding the ground for a pro-European spirit and to bring European debates to those organizations. For us, it's also super important that we do not forget other countries. So at the moment, we are very active in reaching out also via our member organizations to create a even denser network between European states, not only via the formal diplomatic channels, but using the societal organizations which are present in many European countries. So we work a lot with Serbia, with Italy, with Poland, which is very important to us. And maybe one very last word, what we currently also look at, also in the wake of the German parliamentary elections coming up, is also how Germany is conducting its EU policy, where there is broad reform needed as well. That might be too technical now to start this conversation. If you're interested, do let me know. We can continue this. But I think it is in our hand also as member states to make our governance better and not always only look at the EU level and say this has to change, but also to stick to your own state and say, look, you need reforms as well, and not only Brussels.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for every one of you for this conversation, and I really hope that you all inspired our listeners to make their contribution to make Europe a better place. So thank you for being here, and hopefully see you very soon in person for another conversation around these very topical matters.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Claudio, for the moderation.
My pleasure, my honor.
Good evening, everyone, and of course, Happy Europe Day. What a better way to gather on this day than being with many people from different cities in Europe, which we are currently doing. We are on Discord here. For those who don't know, please come and join us because we have some great discussions prepared. To introduce myself, I'm Hannah, and together with Miko, who's also, you can see his picture. Maybe Miko can wave to everyone. We are leading the team involved on the conference on the future of Europe. And yeah, this has been launched today on this Europe Day. And we thought, like, what is our kick launch to this? And the idea was to have some, rather informal experimental debates on Discord, which give the possibility of different people asking questions, debating, and randomly coming together in these kind of Discord rooms. So yeah, maybe Nico, if you want to say a couple of words, and then everyone else can introduce themselves.
Sure, thank you. Thanks a lot, Hannah. I hope you can hear me right now. I see that you can. So one more time, Happy Europe's Day. It's great to have you all here. Here right now, I have you basically in Prague, in the capital city of Czech Republic. This is where I'm located, but I'm originally a Polish person, and I am with Volt since last year, and the journey is amazing right now. Together with Hannah and group of Euro enthusiasts, we are working on conference of future of Europe, and that's why we are meeting here. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Miko. And yeah, Miko will be in the channel which you can see on the left, which is general information, and give some general information on CoFE. Then we have another super interesting channel, which is citizen empowerment. And yeah, maybe Alberto, come on stage and say something you will be debating in your channel.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Albert. I'm living in Südtirol. It is an autonomous region in northern eastern Italy. And today we're going to be debating about ensuring equal usage of public services by different categories of citizens. So kind of a technical, something that can look very technical, but it's very humane indeed.
Yeah, really interesting. So come join Alberto in Citizen Empowerment to discuss this. Then we have another channel, which is Economic Renaissance. Two people of Economic Renaissance. Show your face and introduce yourself.
Thanks, Hannah. Happy Europe's Day. And on behalf of Economic Renaissance, we will discuss about universal basic income. We do believe that this is a topic that is very important for the future of Europe, and we would like to hear from our citizens participants what they think about that. So during our session, we will present some figures, we will discuss about recent outcomes in this topic, and of course, give you the word to ask if in the future we need one in Europe, and if yes, how it should look like. Thanks, Anna.
Cool, also a super interesting topic. Come and join Zhao in Economic Renaissance. Next topic on my list is EU reform. I see Elizabeth already, and Uwe is also here.
Yeah, hi. My name is Elizabeth. I am originally from Germany, Flensburg to be specific. That's close to the Danish border. I am part of the European policy team. I am one of the EU reform facilitators, and together with Udo, whom you see also turning on his camera, I'm going to be discussing in the EU reform channel about European democratic representation in general, and maybe also about a couple more technical institutional details, how we made better that situation in Europe.
Very cool, amazing. Yeah, sorry, Uwe, please go.
Yes, Happy Europe Day from me as well. I will assist Elizabeth today, and I'm from Paderborn, Germany, and I have drafted an initiative looking into details of a future European state, and so I'm happy to discuss with you in EU reform this future possible European state.
Nice, great, really cool. The next topic is global balance, and I have Rob and Mo here.
Yes, Mo, do you want to go first?
Sure, yeah. My name is Mo. I'm originally from Germany, and right now I'm in The Hague. And I'm Global Balance Facilitator together with Rob. And Rob, do you want to talk about what we're discussing?
Yes, okay. I'm Rob from the Netherlands and live in the south of the Netherlands near the city of Antwerp, which is a very nice city also. But we'll want to discuss with you whether it will be possible for putting forward by 10 years the target of the European Union to become climate neutral. We think it is needed as Volt, but there might be some issues. We would like your opinion on that. And maybe you think it's stupid to do it, or maybe you think it's impossible. Please discuss with us.
Very cool. Also, very important topic. I'm sure there will be a different opinion on it, and join them in Global Balance to discuss this. The next topic is general information, which Miko will lead. He introduced himself already. And then we have Smart State with Johannes, I think, and also Nina, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes, Nina is the long version. The short version is Connie. So I think that might be easier. That's why you also see me as Connie from Volt here. I'm based in Berlin, Germany, and this has been a very beautiful Europe Day here. We've been celebrating, we've been having a big party as far as that is possible during the pandemic, and that's actually, as a matter of fact, a good segue to the topic that we're going to talk about, because we always try to look at the future and how to make things a little bit better. And that's why we're going to talk about pandemic prevention as part of our smart state. Johannes, you want to also say something maybe?
Yeah. So I'm Johannes. I'm actually based in Greifswald, Germany. Although I was based since recently in Ireland, Galway, but I have moved to Germany to take over professorship in systems biology. So I'm a biostatistician actually. So what I will present to you and what I will hope we would get out of it is discuss how actually scientific evidence may inform politics or also may not inform politics, and what we can learn from all the data in Europe from the pandemic.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks a lot to you too. Also really interesting topic. I hope I can have a little glance in later. Next, last but not least, is social equality. And we have Juliette here, right? At least I thought so. But yeah, if she's not here right now, it might be time for all of us to join the different channels now. For the participants, for those of you who don't know Discord yet, you can click on a channel and then be in this room. I'll be hanging around in this lobby a bit more for people who have technical questions or have questions in general. We also have more advanced Discord people around who can help with everything I can't talk about, or I can help you with. And everyone can go to their channels now, and wish you a fruitful discussion.
Hello, everyone, and a very happy Europe Day still. I hope it has been a good Europe Day today. Today is also another important day in connection with the Europe Day. It's called the EU Sign Day. My name is Anna. I'm the co-city lead for Volt Utrecht, and I'm originally from Helsinki, Finland, but located in Utrecht in the Netherlands. And you may have heard about our ECI initiative already. ECI means European Citizen Initiative, and anybody in Europe can actually have an idea of something that can be improved in the European legislation. I'm now going to share a screen of a presentation which we can quickly check and run through, both about the Volt European Citizen Initiative, which was launched half a year ago, and also about the EU Sign Day. Yes, so I hope you can all see the screen. Half a year ago, Volt members voted for an idea of a citizen initiative. And I think many ideas were listed, and there was a short list of 6 ideas at the end. Then the best idea was voted to be processed forward and to be introduced to the Commission. And what has happened since last year is that we have actually started a task force around the European Citizen Initiative. We started connecting prospective partners and collecting data. We are currently preparing a website, and we're getting ready with the legal submission forms that we need to submit to the European Commission. At the same time, the European Commission is also asking people to join the team. So each ECI team should always have 7 people in the group. We are also supporting other ECI initiatives. And yeah, one moment, I need to go back to my presentation. Yes, never mind. So in order to get any initiative further, you would need to have 7 people in your team. And for the actual idea to get further, you would then need a really good idea. You would need to have a project plan around it, and you would need to write several documents that are supporting your idea. And once you have launched the idea, you need to get 1 million signatures, and you need to have a lot of partnerships. And I think you also need to do quite a lot of fundraising with the idea. And we are also within Volt, we are supporting other initiatives. For example, yeah, this is the human survey. We'll talk about that in a second. Yeah, we support initiatives like Stop Global Warming, Voters Without Borders, and Actions on Climate Emergency. These are ECI teams that we directly are in cooperation with, but there are a lot of other initiatives. So our Volt initiative is not live yet. We are still working on it. It's still a project in progress. But the initiatives that have been already prepared and are live, you can see them all on the website. And the website is here, europa.eu/citizens initiative. And to get back to what I mentioned in the beginning, today is also the EU Sign Day. Some of different partners, they got together and they were wondering, why isn't European Citizen Initiative actually known among the European citizens? And then they thought, okay, let's start a survey and let's ask citizens in different countries, do they actually know what an ECI is and have they ever heard about the European Citizen Initiative? And the results from that survey are quite serious, I would say, since only 2.4% of people in these 4 countries, you take the average of all these 4 countries, it's less than 3% of people who know what an ECI, so European Citizen Initiative, is. So that means that in our democratic system in Europe, we have a serious problem. And we could say the same about Europe in general and European Union. A lot of people don't know what is going on and how can citizens participate in the decision making themselves. And since this is very important, today is the EU Sign Day. And if you go to the website eusignday.eu, you see all these initiatives. It's very easy to sign the initiatives that you feel that you can support yourself. You sign it and you're done. There are also videos about the EU Sign Day. You can go on YouTube and check with EU Sign Day. And in this way, we can support other organizations with their good initiatives, and we can make sure that European legislation is being amended and made better. And I can quickly mention what the Volt ECI is about. We are passionate about trains and traveling by train. And last year we had the idea that wouldn't it be great to have a properly European train network, a train network where you would have a unified signaling system, you would have a single scheduling system, and you would have other technical advantages that would make European train traveling a lot faster and a lot greener and a lot easier for a lot of us. And while we are still working on that project, if you're interested in trains or want to hear about greener traveling in Europe, please join our Discord channel. There is one called Eurotrain, and I think maybe it's actually called European Transportation, but it's easy to find under Volt Europa. Yeah, so we're planning to launch our own initiatives, but in the meanwhile, we should just support the other initiatives from other groups and other countries, and just try to make Europe a better place for all of us. And if you're still staying and following this stream tonight, at 9 o'clock, there will be Dinxperience, which is an event in cooperation with the German and Dutch teams. It will be very interesting as well. And thanks to everybody for staying active. And yeah, let's sign some initiatives and be happy with Europe. Thank you, everyone.
Einen schönen guten Abend, liebe Zuschauer, hier aus dem Studio in der Brüggenhütte. Mein Kollege Jan van der Horst leiten heute Abend diverse Talkshow-Runden und durch einen bunten Abend mit Lichtershow und Live-Musik. Denn wir feiern heute den Europatag. Und das Motto, unter dem wir heute feiern, ist Erleuchte die Freiheit. Und wir freuen uns ganz besonders, dass wir das mit niederländischen und deutschen Gästen hier im Studio feiern können. Nach der ersten Talkshow-Runde schalten wir live zur A, wo es die besagte Lichtershow gibt. Und es ist hier ein ganz geschichtsträchtiger Ort, da gehen wir später auch noch drauf ein. Und ja, ich würde sagen, wir begrüßen unsere Gäste. Das sind Frau Landrätin Silke Sommers und Carina Beckmann von Volt NRW. Herzlich willkommen.
Dankeschön für die Einladung. Wir freuen uns auch super hier zu sein.
Nou, en ook hartelijk welkom aan onze Nederlandse kijkers. Fijn dat u allemaal ingeschakeld heeft om dit bijzondere evenement te aanschouwen. En we beginnen dit evenement inderdaad met een talkshow zoals Melanie al even aangeduid heeft. En we hebben ook onze Nederlandse gasten en die mag ik ook even aan u voorstellen. En dat is allereerst, en ik ben heel vereerd dat hij hier aanwezig is, onze commissaris van de Koning, meneer Berends. Dank u wel. Hartelijk welkom. En daarnaast meneer Bengevoort aanwezig als lid van de Raad van Europa. En daar gaan we straks ook nog even nader op in. Ja, Europa, een thema, verbinding, een woord wat heel erg centraal staat. Meneer Berends, Europa, wat betekent dat voor u? Wat zegt Europa u?
Nou, ik zal u zeggen, vanochtend vroeg heb ik gelijk wel de vlag gehesen, de Europese vlag. Zoals ik vorige week natuurlijk ook de Nederlandse vlag heb gehesen. En dan gaat er toch weer iets door mij heen naar denken. Hoe mooi is het eigenlijk dat we hier in vrede kunnen leven met al die landen in Europa. En natuurlijk gebeurt er ook wel het nodige wat je denkt van nou. Maar dankzij Europa hebben we toch hier het welvarend. En dat vind ik zo'n groot goed. Dus daar ben ik eigenlijk iedere dag toch wel blij om, ja.
Ja, het is ook bijzonder. Het is bijzonder dat we meer dan 75 jaar na heftige gevechten die hier op deze locatie ook gevoerd zijn, maar waarin we natuurlijk met z'n allen een verschrikkelijke periode doorgemaakt hebben, dat we zo naar elkaar toegegroeid zijn. En ja, meneer Bengevoort, u als lid van de Raad van Europa, wat is uw beleving met Europa?
Nou ja, ik denk dat heel mooi is, het congres van lokale en regionale overheden bij de Raad van Europa is een congres met 648 leden uit 47 landen die met elkaar vooral kijken naar democratie, mensenrechten en de rechtsstaat. Hoe staat het met de rechtsstaat in de diverse landen in het gebied van de Raad van Europa? Wij monitoren congressen, wij gaan in gesprek, niet alleen bij landen heel ver weg. Afgelopen maand mocht ik met een aantal collega's van mij werd Nederland gemonitord. En toen mochten wij uitleggen aan bijna alle landen in Europa waar de burgemeester rechtstreeks door de bevolking is gekozen, dat het systeem in Nederland toch eigenlijk ook best een goed systeem is. En dan heb je hele leuke gesprekken met elkaar, die uitwisseling vindt plaats. Maar vooral de aandacht ook voor die thema's is denk ik heel belangrijk, omdat juist 75 jaar geleden we hebben gezien wat er gebeurt als dat soort dingen niet zo belangrijk zijn.
Ja. En u zegt het al zelf, hè? Het is een groot orgaan, hè? Dat congres voor lokale overheden, waar u deel van uitmaakt. Als burgemeester van Winterswijk bent u daar ook een vertegenwoordiger in dat congres. Meer dan 600 vertegenwoordigers heb ik begrepen. Kun je daar dan als burgemeester van een grensregio verschil maken? Ja. Voor een grensregio als de onze?
Nou, ik zit er niet namens Winterswijk, nee. We zitten er namens Nederland. Overigens in de delegatie ook samen met de provincie. De gedeputeerde Mark van Gelderland is ook actief bij ons in de delegatie. En ja, juist ook omdat we als Nederland heel consistent wel onze piketpalen hebben geslagen, kunnen we ook echt wel het verschil maken. En wordt er ook naar ons geluisterd. En ja, daar ben ik wel heel erg trots op. Ook vooral wat de collega's voor mij al die jaren al bereikt hebben. En ja, dat moeten we vooral ook blijven zien. En ja, goed, je noemt grensregio en je vraagt ook een beetje wat is Europa. Ik zeg het wel eens, wat we daar doen is Europa in het groot. Maar wat wij hier natuurlijk doen is eigenlijk Europa in het klein. Dagelijks, wij collega's hier in de grensregio hebben die contacten met elkaar om het juist voor onze inwoners die grens eigenlijk een beetje weg te moffelen. Want eigenlijk wil je hem niet meer tegenkomen.
Ja, duidelijk.
Ja, Frau Sommers, hier an der Brückenhütte gab es zum Ende des Zweiten Weltkriegs Schlachten, die viele Opfer gefordert haben. Heute haben wir das große Glück, nach 75 Jahren in Freiheit und Frieden hier zusammen leben zu dürfen. Wie erleben Sie das im Kreis Borken, das Zusammenleben in Europa, aber auch besonders mit den niederländischen Nachbarn?
Also es wird immer einfacher, wenn man wirklich mal 76 Jahre zurückgeht, das Leid, was der Krieg bei beiden Seiten, aber auch vor allen Dingen in der niederländischen Seite mitgebracht hat und wie verfeindet auch noch es in vielen Köpfen gewesen ist, das hat sich ja völlig geändert. Alleine diese Aktion heute, Niederländische und Deutsche zusammen in einem Raum, in einer Diskussion, freundschaftlich verbunden und das 76 Jahre nach dem Krieg, das ist meines Erachtens der ganz, ganz große Verdienst auch von Europa. Hätte es Europa nicht gegeben, glaube ich, würden wir hier nicht sitzen. Würde es immer noch Grenzen geben, nicht, dass wir einfach mal über die Grenze gehen können, ohne großartig kontrolliert zu werden, mal eben nach Winterswijk, nach Arnhem zu gehen oder die Niederländer, die nach Bocholt, Veen, Vreden, Borken gehen, um einzukaufen oder auch familiär auch verbunden sind, heiraten und in einer Familie Deutsche, Niederländer. Ich glaube, vor 76 Jahren wäre das überhaupt nicht denkbar gewesen. Und das hat wirklich Europa gebracht, dass wir freundschaftlich miteinander verbunden sind und auf Augenhöhe wieder in den Augen sehen können, vieles zusammen machen können, viel Spaß haben, Radtouren zusammen machen. Also hier ein bisschen weiter ist ein Golfclub. Da sind sowohl Deutsche als auch Niederländer. Wir spielen zusammen Golf. Und das zeigt einfach, wie wichtig Europa ist. Und wer das vergessen hat, der sollte wirklich mal 76 Jahre zurückschauen. Bocholt war zu 97% zerstört. Auch hier Deutsche, Niederländer haben aufeinander geschossen. Ich glaube, das will kein Mensch mehr haben.
Frau Beckmann, warum schlägt Ihr Herz für Europa? Sie sind von Volt NRW hier und Sie setzen sich in Ihrem politischen Programm sehr für Europa ein. Wie kommt das?
Ganz genau, Europa ist sogar unser Kern und noch viel besser, wir wollen noch ein viel stärkeres Europa. Wir fordern das Europa, was wir heute haben, heraus. Denn wir glauben an die Freiheit, an die Menschenrechte, an die Würde von Europa und wir glauben, dass Europa noch viel mehr Potenziale hat. Denn wir sehen die ganzen Herausforderungen dieser Zeit, die globalen Probleme, die Pandemien, die Klimakrise, aber auch der Umgang mit Geflüchteten, die aus ihren Ländern Schutz suchen. Wir glauben, dass wir ein viel stärkeres Europa brauchen. Deswegen sitze ich heute nicht nur für Volt NRW hier, sondern auch für Volt Europa. Wir arbeiten wirklich über die Ländergrenzen hinweg, digital im Raum. Wir haben ein gemeinsames europäisches Manifesto, wo wir unsere Werte für Volt niederlegen und wollen die EU-Reform, dass die EU wirklich in dem Sinne so handlungsfähig ist, dass wir gemeinsam vereint stark die Probleme angehen können, indem wir zum Beispiel auch gegen das Einstimmigkeitsprinzip gehen und so nationale Staaten ein Stück weit auch zurücknehmen an den großen Problemen und dann wirklich handlungsfähiger werden. Im Endeffekt sage ich immer gerne, europäisch denken, lokal lenken, an der Stelle, wo es europäisch Sinn macht im Großen, da leben wir das und da tauschen wir uns auch aus. Auch eine tolle Sache von uns, wir arbeiten zum einen evidenzbasiert, wir überlegen, was ist jetzt das Problem, was ist die Sache und nehmen dafür dann die pragmatische Lösung, möglichst progressiv. Und auf der anderen Seite gucken wir, was gibt es denn schon in Europa? Wir nennen das Best Practice. Eins meiner Lieblings-Best Practices ist, wie wir in Amsterdam zum Beispiel die Kreislaufwirtschaft gestalten und wie wir das nach Deutschland oder auch in unsere Städte reinbringen können. Und profitieren dann vom Austausch miteinander, schon während wir in der Partei arbeiten.
Das klingt ganz spannend.
Danke.
Ja. Meneer de commissaris, je hoort hier mevrouw Sommers en mevrouw Beckman spreken over een Europa waarin we elkaar heel goed weten te vinden en waar misschien de wens is om elkaar wel veel meer nog te vinden. Wie weet in de toekomst richting een federatief Europa. Wat kan de provincie Gelderland daar dan in doen? Welke rol heeft een provincie Gelderland daarin?
Nou, we hebben vooral zoals ik altijd ook noem, een verbindende rol daarin. Ik was laatst hier ook in het grensgebied. Dan zie ik natuurlijk dat een aantal lokale gemeentes met elkaar zeer intensief samenwerken. Dat gaat van politie tot en met brandweer. Gaat over toerisme, gaat over zakelijk, gaat over cultuur. En in een wat groter verband, dan krijg je met de provincie te maken, om het zo maar te zeggen. Nou, ik zit natuurlijk ook in allerlei overleggremia. En dan gaat het niet over Gelderland, maar dan gaat het over Oost-Nederland. En Oost-Nederland kan ook nog met Zuid-Nederland erbij. En nog iets naar het noorden toe ook. En dan ga je gezamenlijk optrekken bijvoorbeeld naar Brussel. En dan zit je daar in de lobby om te kijken wat zou je dus kunnen betekenen voor het hele grensgebied. En ja, dan maakt massa dus aantal wel uit. Ja. En wij verbinden daar graag onze samenwerking ook aan en onze ondersteuning. Ja, ik krijg eerlijk gezegd niet alleen feitelijk nu waarom vanwege de lampen waarschijnlijk, maar ook vanwege de woorden die mevrouw Sommer en mevrouw Beckman, daar krijg ik gewoon een goed gevoel bij. Ja. Nou, het volhoudt. Tegelijkertijd bekruipt mij, en ik ben echt de man van het glas is half vol hoor, maar ik zie ook dat er veel bedreigingen zijn in Europa. Nou, ik ben hartstikke blij met zo'n partij als Volt. Ik ben zeer recht herzlich froh darüber, dass Volt nun da ist. Aber jedes Land hat seine Problemen met Europa. En dan moeten wij dus gezamenlijk proberen op te trekken. En dan kan Joris Bengevoort daar ook altijd in betekenen, maar ook de provincies in Nederland weer. In het samen met Noord-Rijn-Westfalen bijvoorbeeld. Ja. Om dan dat je toch een vuist maakt tegen dat soort, ik vind het toch wel vervelende signalen. Ja. Weg met Europa. Nou, hoe kom je daarbij? Dan heb je geen idee waar je het over hebt. Want dan ga je schade aanrichten, wat met name mevrouw Sommer zo even zei. Ja. Laten we dat alsjeblieft niet doen.
Nee, heel duidelijk.
En ik moet voorzichtig zijn met politiek, hè, als commissaris van de Koning.
Dat is heel duidelijk. Dat mogen wij er misschien iets meer zijn. Maar het is duidelijk dat we uit de geschiedenis komen die we straks benoemd hebben. Ja. En inderdaad heel kwetsbaar. Ja. En laten we met name de verbinding zoeken. Hè. Dat is denk ik heel erg belangrijk. Dus, ik vraag me nog wel af, wat binnen de provincie Gelderland is een duidelijk punt, wat ook op in alle uitingen van de provincie naar voren komt, is dat ze graag ook een handelscorridor willen zijn. Hè? Is dat niet een beetje in tegenspraak met een sterke grensregio?
Nou, zie ik niet. Ik zie dat zo, als de grensregio sterk is, dan kunnen wij dat ondersteunen. En ja, Gelderland, de corridor richting Rotterdam en dan zo door Gelderland, nou zeg maar richting, dat gaat richting Italië toe. Ja. En richting het noorden Hamburg en Berlijn, zeg ik dan maar even.
Met Dinxperience als de poort van Europa.
Ja, nou, ik vind het prima. Ja. Nee, maar laten we elkaars kracht daarin opzoeken en niet de concurrentie. Ja. Hoewel ik best wel ondernemend genoeg in elkaar zit ook. Maar er zit zoveel potentieel ook in dit gebied en in andere gebieden in ons land. En laten we die koppelen aan elkaar en ervoor te zorgen dat we krachtiger worden. Ja.
Ik denk juist ook dat soort corridors laten zien. Ik ben geboren Winterswijk en weer teruggekomen. Ik moest me soms bijna verontschuldigen. Ga je aan de rand van Nederland wonen? Zeg ik, nee, we gaan niet aan de rand van Nederland wonen. Ik woon midden in Europa. Vanaf hier is Düsseldorf dichterbij als Amsterdam. Ja. Dat is ook een heel interessante stad, het hele Ruhrgebied. Ja. En juist dat soort corridors kunnen ook heel erg helpen om dat Europa aan elkaar te knopen. En dan moet je die bang voor zijn, dat moet je alleen maar toejuichen, denk ik.
Ja. Ja, en de kern vind ik eigenlijk wel, als we, noem het dan maar, het wat grootschalige, dus dit soort corridors met elkaar te vormen, tegelijkertijd ook de eigen identiteit van een gebied dat ook hier geldt. En dat is ook de kracht die we met elkaar moeten kunnen opbrengen. Dus respecteren wat hier dus het DNA is van de bevolking. Ja. In combinatie met, noem het dan maar, het wat grotere. Door het kleine te doen verdient het groter, zeg ik altijd.
Nee, dat is heel duidelijk. Dat is heel duidelijk. Ja.
Frau Sommer, worauf sollte denn der Fokus in der Zusammenarbeit mit den Niederlanden, mit Europa Ihrer Meinung nach sein?
Also jetzt, wenn ich reine Grenzgebiet hier sehe, da würde ich mir manchmal wünschen, dass auf dem Arbeitsmarkt und Ausbildungsmarkt, dass das einfacher wird. Ich finde, da ist einfach noch immer zu viel Bürokratie, sind zu viele Hindernisse. Warum kann nicht der Niederländer einfach in die deutsche Schule gehen und umgekehrt, wenn er eine Ausbildungsstelle in den Niederlanden hat oder in Dinxperience? Das ist mir alles noch wirklich zu viele Staaten. Also da macht jeder so sein eigenes Süppchen und das finde ich total schade, weil wir sollten eigentlich so dazu kommen, dass wir ein Gebiet sind ohne Grenzen, ohne Mauern, auch im Kopf nicht und auch nicht im Gesetzbuch. Und dann ist es ganz einfach, dass wir auch berufsmäßig wirklich von A nach B wechseln können, auch in den Sozialversicherungen, dass es völlig egal ist, ob ich 3 Jahre in den Niederlanden gearbeitet habe, dann wieder 5 Jahre in Deutschland, dann nochmal 3 Jahre in Italien, um das nochmal zu erweitern. Also ich glaube, da gibt es noch unheimlich viel Potenzial, was Europa noch hat. Und gerade wenn man sieht, in Handelsbeziehungen, die Niederlande, Deutschland ist die zweitgrößte Handelspartner, in Nordrhein-Westfalen sogar das größte. Also man sieht schon, wie stark die miteinander verbunden sind und das muss einfach einfacher werden, weil ich glaube, dass dann auch die Menschen einfach schneller von A nach B gehen und dass das überhaupt nicht mehr in den Köpfen ist, dass sie in den Niederlanden sind oder in Italien. Mein Neffe ist jetzt gerade für 2 Jahre studiert er in Mailand. Das müsste völlig normal sein, dass wir mal hier was machen.
Was ist das größte Problem, um das zu schaffen, was du soeben sagst?
Also ich glaube, dass noch vieles in den Köpfen drin ist, dass jeder so seine Wege mehr haben möchte bezüglich der Verwaltung.
Okay.
Da müsste mehr einheitlich gekommen sein. Und da müssten wir im Endeffekt, meines Erachtens, brauchten wir eine Reset-Taste in allen Ländern, das ein weißes Blatt Papier ist.
Aha.
Und dann gucken wir, wie wir es machen sollen. Und dadurch, dass bei jedem was anderes ist, das jetzt zusammen zu kanalisieren, um da was rauszubekommen, das ist, glaube ich, die Schwierigkeit. Aber nicht unmöglich.
Okay, nein, denk ik ook niet.
Nou woon ik zelf 20 jaar in deze regio. En die woorden die hoor ik ook eigenlijk al een tijdje. En veel al toch wel bij beleidsbepalers, beleidsbeslissers. En hebben we niet veel meer body nodig van onderaf om dat dan ook praktisch handvatten te geven, wat mevrouw Sommers hier zo netjes benoemt, meneer Bengevoorde.
Ik denk dat het heel belangrijk is en ik merk zelf, ik mag nu 4 jaar in deze regio weer werken, dat je je als grensregio laat horen. En niet alleen maar wij als Nederlanders aan de ene kant en de Duitsers aan hun kant, maar wij hebben inmiddels met de burgemeester ook in deze regio de traditie om met elkaar naar Den Haag te gaan, met elkaar naar Düsseldorf of met elkaar naar Berlijn. Zodat je ook laat zien dat die samenwerking niet iets is van we komen uit een soort beleefdheid bij elkaar op bezoek. We wisselen een foto en we wisselen een boeket bloemen uit. Ja. Maar hier wordt echt wel samengewerkt. Ja. En juist ook op de thema's die worden aangegeven, onderwijs, maar ook arbeidsmarkt, hebben we die beleidsmakers die toch ver weg zitten nodig. Maar ik ben wel heel blij hoe we daar als regio's aan beide kanten van de grens, samen met de provincies, samen ook met het Bezirk Münster, hoe we optrekken om te kijken hoe we dat wel kunnen laten veranderen langzamerhand. Dus we zijn de goede kant op. En het is een weg met lange adem. Ja. Maar dat is...
Misschien hebben we daar een partij als Volt voor nodig om dat meer gestalte te geven, Melanie.
Machen Sie ruhig weiter.
Ganz genau, ich fand das ganz spannend, dass Frau Sommer, dass Sie gerade sagten, wir bräuchten eigentlich ein weißes Blatt Papier und einen Neustart. Das ist ziemlich genau, was wir seit 3 Jahren mit Volt Europa machen. Wir haben uns gemeinsam die Amsterdam Declaration gegeben, also wirklich unsere Werte, woran wir für Europa glauben. Und wir arbeiten jetzt wirklich Stück für Stück dran, dass wir in allen Städten und Nationen und auf der europäischen Ebene tätig sind und alles miteinander ausgetauscht wird. Wir sagen halt wirklich, wir möchten die Leute befähigen, dass sie gemeinsam Politik verändern können, um so halt europäisches Potenzial, also wir sagen immer, unlock Europe's potential, also dass es quasi möglich gemacht wird, dass wir Europa wirklich nutzen können. Und wir sind jetzt wirklich in 30 europäischen Ländern bereits als Bewegung und in etwas weniger Ländern als Partei aktiv und treten wirklich bei allen verschiedenen Wahlen an und übersetzen quasi, was wir im europäischen Zielen haben, auf die lokale Ebene, was man dort braucht. Weil Sie haben eben so schön gesagt, nicht alles, was quasi in Brüssel passiert, interessiert die Leute vielleicht in Bocholt. Man muss das schon natürlich auch mit der jeweiligen Brille betrachten. Aber genau diesen Austausch auf den verschiedenen Ebenen, den möchten wir schaffen. Und ich glaube, ein Problem, was Sie auch gerade angesprochen haben, war, dass wir viel aus den nationalen Interessen herausarbeiten. Unser Europäisches Parlament, vor allen Dingen die Kommission, arbeiten sehr stark von den Ländern getrieben. Da steckt dann sehr wenig europäische Vielfalt am Ende mit drin. Das Parlament kann sich gar nicht richtig entfalten. Und das ist ja eigentlich von uns europäischen Bürgern gewählt. Ja, und deswegen möchten wir diese europäische Partei wirklich in den ganzen Ländern etablieren, um gemeinsam mit den einheitlichen Zielen diese Vielfalt von Europa zu entfalten. Genau.
Wir haben jetzt die Zukunftskonferenz, ist ja heute gestartet, 1 Jahr, wo alle Bürger der EU sich daran beteiligen sollen. Das sind immerhin 700 Millionen, die sich daran beteiligen können. Und von daher kann man, glaube ich, auch heutzutage wirklich nochmal darauf zurufen, beteiligt euch, weil es ist unser Land, es ist unser Europa, es ist unser Frieden. die wir, glaube ich, alle haben möchten. Und von daher, damit es uns auch in Zukunft noch gut geht, weil auch die Pandemie ist irgendwann mal wieder vorbei, so dass wir wirklich auch in die Niederlanden reisen können, nach Italien und welche schönen Länder Europa alles noch hat, weil das soll ja irgendwann Ziel zijn, dass wir wieder hin und her reisen können und Spaß haben.
Dat is een prachtig doel.
Ik wou zeggen, nee, de pandemie is natuurlijk iets vreselijks wat ons overkomen is en nog steeds is. Maar tegelijkertijd heeft het ook aangegeven hoe belangrijk het is dat we onderling elkaar goed kennen.
Ja.
We pakten zo de telefoon en we belden even met Münster bij wijze van spreken. Of we belden met Düsseldorf of met Keulen. Het hele grensgebied. En ja, toen hadden we het er even over. Wel of niet een poster. Hè? Even liever niet naar Duitsland komen of even liever niet naar Nederland komen. En daar hadden we geen beleidsnota voor nodig. Dat was gewoon het contact.
Laten we dat als voor ogen houden en vasthouden. Dat we hebben het straks even gehad over het verbinden. En het elkaar makkelijk kunnen vinden is een voorwaarde om goed te kunnen verbinden. Ik denk dat het goed is om richting een afsluiting van dit gesprek te gaan. Anders worden de technici aan de andere kant zenuwachtig. En dat willen we helemaal niet hebben natuurlijk. Want er staat een heel mooi evenement op stapel. Een prachtige lichtspektakel wat voorbereid is en wat Verlicht Europa heet. En waar we met z'n allen zo meteen van gaan genieten. En in ieder geval is het denk ik goed, Melanie, als we daar ook een officieel momentje aan vastkoppelen. En dat we aan meneer de commissaris gaan vragen om dat zometeen, dat lichtspektakel, ook in werking te zetten. Hij heeft daar ook een mooie knop voor zich staan. Ja, de rode. En de rode knop, en in heel veel situaties is die gevaarlijke rode knop. Maar ik heb me laten vertellen dat het in dit geval een hele prettige en veilige knop is. En dat het een opmaat is voor Verlicht Europa. Dus ik zou willen vragen of we met een druk op de knop toch het spektakel in beeld brengen. Dat gaan we zo meteen doen. Niet nadat ik gezegd heb dat we straks dus naar het lichtspektakel gaan kijken. Dat we daarna nog terugkomen met het tweede deel van de talkshow. We hebben vanavond 3 talkshows. Het tweede deel van de talkshow hebben we 4 burgemeesters uit deze grensregio aan tafel. Waar we verder op lokaal niveau een aantal items gaan bespreken. Maar meneer de commissaris, mag ik u vragen om de officiële handeling te verrichten en Verlicht Europa echt in werking te zetten?
Auf ein sehr schönes Europa. Zusammen. 3, 2, 1.
Ganz gut. Herzlichen Dank.
Ja,
und
vielen Dank.
Ich werde Ihnen ausladen, um nach draußen zu kommen.
Ja, natürlich.
So, vielleicht so.
Dennis Agnew, Robert Burns, Caleb Connor, Basil Seymour Cornell, William Cowan, John Provan Ferguson, William Ernest Hawkins,
Walter Alteköster, Alfons Bartels, Anton Brunetta, Erich Deuss, Karl Friedrich Ebert, Karl Heinz Ewald, Hermann Geschwendt,
Malcolm MacDonald Hague, William Hopcroft, William Henry Kavanagh, Richard Martindale, Robert John McShane, William Mingham, Arthur Patience,
Bernhard Jehl, Johann Kufner, Jakob Kugler, Albert Rudolf Losser, Rudolf Malorni, Rudi Mertens, Werner Müller,
John William Philpott, John Robinson, Thomas Simon, Edin Greville Spencer, Ronald Weaving, Joseph Rightly Wilson, John Wright,
Ernst Redeker, Paul Sauter, Siegfried Schönborn, Kurt Schöpke, Arthur Schulke, Richard Sporl, Walter Witt.
spannend, schitternd, strahlend. Niemals darfst du's vergessen, tief im Herzen bist du frei.
Ik maak je horizon breed, toon je wonder na wonder. Niemals darfst du vergessen, es ist fast wie Zauberei.
Vlieg met me mee, van nu af zijn we beiden vrij. Niemand die ons gebiedt, mag wel, mag niet, of zegt dat wij maar dromen.
In deine Welt, so neu, so völlig unbekannt, kann ich auf Wolken gehen und plötzlich sehen, dass deine Welt auch meine werden kann.
Een nieuwe wereld wacht op jou en mij.
Eindelijk helemaal vrij, wie al dat durven denken, schweben, taumeln und wiegen bis hinauf zum Sternenzelt.
Vlieg met je mee,
Wenn alles verwehrt,
hoe is dit alles
und es wird
ooit
immer
ontstaan?
besser.
Ich bin so völlig frei, es ist ein Sein, die Welt nur für uns beide heute schön. Mir gefällt's hier so sehr,
Mein Hart ist voll
ohne
Glück
Kummer und
allein.
Sorgen,
Weil's dann im Middenin ein Nieuwbeginn und ich teile diese Welt mit dir.
een nieuw begin.
Meine Welt,
Wij zijn nu vrij,
wir sind zu zweit.
ein Traum wird wahr.
Ein Nieuwbeginn
Voor
jou en mij.
See all the lights, they all shine across the sky. They need for the night to be so dark to catch your eye. Like the sun needs the rain, and love will need some pain. It'll be alright, the summer's greater than the past. We're going to hold on to tomorrow, moving on from yesterday. We're going to leave behind our sorrow, break it so it fades away. You will find someone, so please dream on. like the sun needs the rain, and love will need some pain. It'll be alright. Hold Hold on. Hold on.
99 Jahre Krieg ließen keinen Platz für Sieger. Kriegsminister gibt's nicht mehr und auch keine Düsen.